Hey guys, you are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see Deku joined Class 1B, A Journey of True Friendship. Here is short summary. I have read a few Izuku joins 1B stories recently and decided to try my hand at as well. In this story Izuku will learn the meaning of true friendship and Aizawa will learn to use gosh darn. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Surrounded by enemies I stood shoulder to shoulder with Tetsu and Kendo as we were at the forefront of the pack with my only friend who transferred from 1A to 1B with me at my back. Even so I saw no reason to worry for once in my life as I had my classmates, my friends by my side. Giving a subtle nod to Tetsu and Kendo after locking eyes with each of them by means of a sideways glance, getting nods and smiles from both of them. All right everyone, let's show them that we are heroes, not their prey. I told everyone as we ran into the fight before us in groups. Izuku had woken up early for his first day at UA due to how excited he was to being there, kind of. Not so much as waking up early as he instead stayed awake the whole night unable to sleep due to his excitement. So instead, he had spent it going over his hero journals with entries on the heroes he knew were teaching at UA. Especially Eraserhead and Vlad King who oversaw the first years. Eraserhead is an amazing hero, but the media gets on his back about his teaching exploits way more than Vlad King. He said to himself as despite the media trying to throw shade his way for being a blood quirk user he was well known as a nice person. When his alarm went off, he grabbed his vacuum-sealed uniform from his closet, opening it up for the first time since receiving it 2 weeks ago. His mother insisted on washing it, but it was vacuum-sealed and new, so he did not want to wash it as he wanted to wear it as new as possible. However, to his horror when he opened it up it was the girl's uniform. What? Izuku could not stop himself from screaming, waking up his mother in the process startling her. Izuku, what's wrong? Inko asked her son as she scrambled in through his doorway. They sent me the girl's uniform. Izuku exclaimed after starting his sentence over from the first word, not screaming enough for the neighbors to hear but loud enough to be called shouting. This confused her, causing to go over the uniform he had laid out on his bed, and then checking the student identification card to see that it said, "You know, if you let me wash it before then we would have noticed the gender mix-up on the card and the uniform." Inko said, knowing her son was distraught but unable to resist the "I told you so" moment before her. After much discussion back and forth they decided he would wear it to school and asked his teacher to fix this after meeting them. They had heard previously from a neighbor that her son had forgotten his uniform in his gym locker once at school wearing his gym clothes home. If the same power-tripping security guard was watching that gate today, then they may prevent him from getting in and starting his first day. With your former quirkless status they may not let it slide if you do not show up on the first day of school. She told him, hating this like the few times in the past where at home she had to acknowledge in front of him how society treated the quirkless. So, with much displeasure and some help from his mother he managed to put on the girl's uniform wearing briefs instead of boxers with them. Izuku had managed to, albeit barely, to catch the train to school on time, avoiding being late. Since there were no seats available he stood by the door holding the hand railing above him with one hand while the other held his bag. Feeling like someone was grabbing his butt from behind he turned his head slightly to see an older man returning his look with a lustful stare and a hushing motion. "If I say or do anything people would notice, and if they find I'm a boy I will die of embarrassment," he thought to himself, trying his best to keep quiet till the train ride was over. Never expecting he would ever have to deal with the rumored train molester he was about to cry when a blonde girl with horn pushed her way through the train crowd. "Stop, you pervert," Honi Tsunotori said as she walked up to them, pulling the man's hand off Izuku's butt just before slapping them across the face. Needless to say, the sight of Izuku about to cry, as indicated by the tears at the edges of his, made it easy for even the people who did not know English to understand what the man did. Someone in the crowd called the line for the station to let them know the man would need to be picked up by security at the next train stop. Picked up he was, off the ground that is not security but by the local police who had a car pulled up outside of the next station taking a break during patrol. It was satisfying for the officers however to see despite the interruption to their break how the man was kicked off the train. Violently shoved out by 3 women who people made room for that stepped up to help Izuku after Pony Tsunotori made everyone aware. "Thank you," Izuku replied in a quiet voice back to Pony unable to bow his head on the crowded train getting a pleasant smile from her. "Thank you all as well," he told the 3 women equally quiet as he did for Pony. The 3 women told him it was no bother to help a cute girl like him. "Yup, I defiantly look like a girl in these clothes," Izuku thought depressingly, barely keeping a smile on his face. "I hope we get in the same class together. After all, we Americans should stick together," Pony Tsunotori told him, waving him off as she sprinted ahead of him as they got off at the same station. This made Izuku wonder what she meant by Americans but decided he needed to hurry so he forgot about it, not realizing he had spoken in perfect English without an accent. This little hiccup of sorts was due to him mastering English by the age of 8 due to his obsession with watching and understanding all Might American interviews. Getting through the gates was going to end up being the easiest thing. Izuku would do that, though he would not know it at the time. As he was making his way through the front gate he could feel people staring at him, even getting what he think his mother would refer to as catcalls. He could feel his face turning a bright crimson but walked forward with his head down, forcing himself to ignore them all. As he had expected, the security guard his neighbor's son had described when they were over was indeed at the front gate. Getting into the school he made his way to the class labeled 1A, marveling at the size of the door before him, hoping his future classmates would forget this. "Oh, hey, you're the girl who saved me," Ochako Uraraka had exclaimed when she saw him, causing Izuku to turn around. "What? No, Izuku was about to say he was a guy before getting cut off as Tenya Ida opened the door upon hearing them scream, stopping his reprimand of Bakugo. "Class is about to start, come in quickly." Ida ushered them in, taking care to be gentle as the 2 girls, despite training to be heroes, were still ladies first. Ida was then unable to introduce himself to them as he wanted to, and praise Midoriya for seeing the truth about the test was stopped by an irate Aizawa who did not like that 1A got all the top 10 students no matter what unless very unique circumstances were at work. "All right everyone, my name is Shota Aizawa. I have no time to waste today as you will all learn how busy heroes can be once classes actually start. First though, we are going to do a quirk apprehension test using the same standard 8 physical fitness tests from middle school. I will meet you all out at the athletics field in 30 minutes. There will be no further questions as I will not waste valuable class time on something superficial like an opening ceremony," Aizawa said, leaving gym uniforms with their names labeled onto the plastic bags containing them on the front desk before walking out. Normally he would be this abrupt, but the students who bothered him the most, Izuku Midoriya almost made another student late with herself by holding them up at the door. As everyone was grabbing their uniforms and leaving, Momo noticed Midoriya standing alone from everyone else who was already walking out. "Excuse, but are you okay? We need to hurry and get changed for class," Momo told the green-haired girl who softly told her to go ahead. Barely being able to hear them, she was worried to leave them alone but decided not to push a stranger, albeit one of her new classmates, to do what she told them to. "Okay, but be quick," she said, thinking maybe they were just self-conscious about changing in front of the others. After all, she was as flat as a brick. Izuku, now relieved she left, was able to get dressed, stuffing the uniform into his school bag as he had no locker at the moment. Thinking back to his encounter on the train, not the pervert but the other UA student who he assumed was American, he hoped she was having an easier time in her class. "Looks like I missed my chance to ask them to fix the uniform issue," Izuku spoke to himself, sighing using English, finally noticing for once without his mother telling him. He shook his head, reminding himself his other classmates likely only spoke Japanese. Not noticing Hagakure was in there with him as she was at the back of the classroom as he began stripping himself. The reason for Hagakure being in there still was since the new mysterious girl with green hair was clearly going to change there, she thought to change with them. But being shocked by their English and assuming he was American like Pony did earlier, she lost her chance to ask if it was okay before they began stripping. So, she decided to avoid the awkward moment by quickly and quietly changing before going to open the door. Only to jump to the other side of it when Izuku's body jolted green energy, indicating along with his physical jerking motion that he noticed her. Going to check the open door, worried but making sure to keep behind it, Izuku had only stuck his head out before looking both ways. Not noticing anyone, he sighed in relief no one caught him changing. He closed the door thinking it just came loose on its own. I should let the teacher know after the door needs to be fixed. He thought before closing it, not noticing Hagakure kneeling right under his chin on the other side, just out of his field of vision. Relieved she would not be called a pervert by what she thought was an American exchange student, she left for the field, glad she already put her uniform in her bag. Everyone had gathered onto the field and Izuku could swear that the teacher was glaring at him, but no, what reason could they have to be upset with him on the first day? In any case, they got to the point quickly. All right everyone, for the first test we will use this ball with a tracker to see how far you can throw the ball with your quirks. The first up being the highest scorer on the exam, Katsuki Bakugo, step up and don't leave the circle, but remember anything goes besides that one rule. Aizawa said, throwing the ball to the student to catch. Despite his gloating, which he did not like and made a mental note to train that out of them, he had to admit that the kid had good reason to be cocky. Getting over 300 meters on the test with a single explosion that was not his maximum was impressive. This was also when Mina Ishido spoke up, saying how this looked like it was going to be fun. Fun, you say? Aizawa asked her in front of everyone, seeing his opportunity. All right then, whoever comes in last for all of the tests will be expelled. He told them, hearing the wave of complaints he was expecting from these group of wide-eyed hopefuls. This irritated him as memories of a certain cloud quirk user came to mind. I can and will expel you, as we teachers at UA have full control of our classes due to our unique traditions here. Also, if none of you have noticed, the world itself is unfair. Every day innocent people suffer for no good reason, and that is why we heroes exist, to fight against this unfairness. Aizawa said, finishing his short speech, seeing the awe on some of their faces. Though most were still nervous. Midoriya, come and throw the ball using your quirk, he told them as they gulped, stepping forward. Izuku stepped forward despite the fairly recent memorized and fear of breaking his arm again, but was determined to not come in last. However, as he wound up his pitch to throw the ball, his quirk had stopped for some reason. That was when he noticed Eraserhead glowing red eyes staring at him with a displeased look on his face. How do you expect to be a hero and save people when you become useless in need of saving yourself after one use of your quirk? Aizawa asked Izuku, who froze up for a moment before grabbing the ball to do it again. Sir, I don't think they understood. Hagakure had spoken up, trying to help defend the student who was singled out their teacher. I assure you they understood me perfectly. Now be quiet and wait your turn. Aizawa told her, making her shrink back into the crowd. Is he some sort of racist that hates foreigners? Hagakure thought, unable to think of any other less rude explanation for what appeared to be targeted behavior. This time Izuku did it without his quirk, scoring a little over 150 meters, impressing everyone, including Bakugo, who kept his annoyance surprisingly to himself for once. All right, I can do this without a need of a quirk thanks to All Might strength training. Izuku thought as he continued to do this for all of the other tests. The grip strength went easily for him, scoring quite high due to raw power, the distance run, and the long jump just barely clearing the sandbox. Though the others were only a little bit tougher for him, he still managed to score, in his opinion, pretty good on the seated toe touch, sit-ups, and repeated side steps. The 50-meter dash he got a little over 5 seconds despite Bakugo purposely hitting him with an explosion. Granted, he tripped at the end due to momentary blindness from the explosion to the face he received, which, as he predicted, the teacher said nothing about. Bakugo laughing at him for tripping was not helping with his confidence issues that All Might was trying to help him with. Speaking of All Might, the symbol of peace was hiding in a nearby corner behind a wall, watching this all unfold before him. I heard he was tough, but give Midoriya a break. He just got the quirk, and wasn't that explosion to the face a dirty trick, you jerk? He thought to himself, getting worried for Midoriya's safety, but had to leave after the 50-meter dash as he still needed to do some paperwork for tomorrow. "I know you can do it, young Midoriya. I believe in you," All Might said to himself quietly as he walked away, wondering if this is what a parent felt like watching their child learn to do something new. These results are what one should expect, all things considered, as most of the tests can easily be accomplished with enough physical ability. It was obvious that Izuku, who honed his body to such a degree that he can carry a hulking mass of muscles like All Might on his back semi-easily, would outclass most of his classmates. Many were quirk-reliant. This meant that since most of their quirks did not have that much brute force, Izuku was able to outdo them despite their creative quirk uses. For example, most would think immediately someone as meek as him would be weaker than Ejiro Kirishima, which is a fair observation since the gym uniforms cover their muscles. However, Kirishima could not lift anywhere near as much as him or had as much grip strength as him, since his endurance was greater than his raw muscle power. You expect him to be better than Midoriya at the long-distance run. But due to years of bullying, Izuku has gained a considerable amount of endurance, or rather stamina. Then there was those like Tsuyu Asui, who mutant quirks allowed her to develop her muscles faster than most, allowing her to just squeak or rather croak out a spot from Ejiro Kirishima. Mina Ishido, though more physically than most, was still behind the three previous students in terms of physical prowess. Rikido Sat had a lot of muscle, but since he brought no sugar to class today, not expecting this test, he could only rely on his natural strength. As such, he fell behind others who had strength, as well as speed or flexibility. He was by no means weak, however. The only reason Toru fell in last was because she was distracted worrying about Izuku during the test, screwing up a few times. Otherwise, she would have placed higher than Mineta, being in a safe spot, as even Aizawa mentally acknowledged that this test made her stealth quirk useless. The person being expelled today is Izuku Midoriya. "Now go grab your bag and get out of this school," he said, shocking them all as he delivered this surprising news with such a bland tone. "Ua Athletics Field, third person POV. But sir, they placed 8th, and wasn't the expulsion thing just an obvious lie?" Momo asked as Hagakure was busy trying to decide whether to cheer in joy that she was not going home or be sad another student would be unfairly robbed of their chance. Aizawa let out a little huff, slapping away Midoriya reached out hand as they tried to sluggishly grab his arm, the student falling backwards onto the ground. "I said this was a quirk apprehension test, and since they did not take my warning seriously like the rest of you did by not using their quirk, I will not waste my time on them," he said, painting Midoriya in most of their eyes as an overconfident slacker. This was mainly due to them not hearing what Aizawa said to Izuku earlier about their quirk. Unable to argue back due to shock, as most of the class was murmuring in agreement about how it was rude he did not take it seriously. Also, she could not bring herself fault his logic, as it only made sense to get rid of a lazy student. Tenya Ida, who was going to apologize earlier to them for their rudeness on the test day, thought now he was right about them and that they must have figured out the true goal of the exam by sheer luck. Ochako Uraraka, who was infatuated before cause they thought Izuku was a boy who saved her while risking their life, had lost all interest now. At first, she was turned off thinking they were also a girl, but when he told them that Izuku was not taking the test seriously while she struggled, this got her upset beyond words, making her quietly seethe in rage at the idea she looked up to a person like that. With they all left Izuku there with Bakugo laughing his ass off at not just his joke leading them to cross-dress on the first day but also seeing them get told off by an actual pro. Ua Hallways Teacher Lounge. Third person POV. Walking though the hallways after everyone else had left was one Itsuka Kendo, who stayed a little bit to talk to her teacher about future martial competitions for her family dojo. As she did, she came across a girl with green hair, and she got closer, seeing diamond-shaped freckles as well. The poor girl was crying her eyes out as she listened to an English video. By the looks of it, it was an interview of All Might from the States, but that was all she knew, as English was not her greatest subject. "Are you okay? Why are you crying?" she asked them as she bent down onto one knee to offer them her handkerchief so they could wipe their face. The reason Izuku was currently still in the female uniform was that he was so shell-shocked by the expulsion he mindlessly changed back into the uniform in the classroom after everyone left. "Why did this happen? How am I supposed to face All Might after this?" He thought to himself, asking such questions repeatedly but not coming up with any answers for them. Tripping and falling onto his knees in the hallway, he pulled up an old interview of All Might on his phone from America, meaning it was in English. It not that he chose this one specifically, it was the first one to be randomly selected from his playlist. As such, he was quietly, almost silently repeating his speech in English as he heard it. This was when an orange-haired girl knelt off her handkerchief, asking him what was wrong. Like a dam, he burst open, unable to hold back any longer. "I just got my quirk. My arm breaks. I passed the tests without. I was expelled." Izuku sobbed and broke midway through sentences forming in his head, only getting out a mess of a sentence. Kendo barely understood any English as it was, and the distressed state they were in was not helping them speak more clearly for her. But from what she could understand, the reason Class 1A did not show up for the welcome ceremony for the first years was because the 1A teacher did a quirk test. The person in front of her only just recently awakened their quirk as a late bloomer and could not control, so it hurt them to use it. Despite passing the test without use of their quirk, meaning through most likely pure physical strength, they were expelled for not using it. What the hell is wrong with that teacher? She thought to herself, practically shouting in her own head. Remembering she had a distraught victim who was unjustly targeted by their teacher, she got herself together. "It's all right, I'm here for you now," Kendo told them, rubbing their back as she pulled the girl into a hug. Ignoring the discomfort from her powerful grasp, she let them cry it out a bit more before lightly separating them, confusing the girl. "Let's get you cleaned up and I will take you to the teacher lounge to see if my teacher in 1B can let you into my class, okay?" She asked them as they sniffled but nodded yes, meaning they understood her. A quick trip to the closest girl bathroom that they cried all the way through. Later they finally got to the teacher lounge. Knocking on the door, she was told to come in. Spotting Vlad Sensei, Midnight Sensei, and Snipe Sensei, she noticed their confused looks. "Sorry Midnight Sensei, but can you help them get something to drink while I talk with Vlad Sensei?" Kendo asked the heroine, who nodded firmly, taking the green-haired girl with her to the fridge. Deciding that the clearly puffy eyes and still slightly sobbing student was in dire need of more than just tap water. So, the heroine gave them her bottle of sparkling water she kept in the staff fridge for herself while rubbing their back in a sideways hug. She also kept an ear open for the conversation between Vlad and his student while Izuku had tuned out everything around him. "All right, so can you explain why Izuku Midoriya was crying?" Vlad King asked his student, surprising her before she recalled that obviously as an exam judge he would know all of the hero course first-year students' names. "Well, from what she told me, the short version is this. She just got her quirk and was living her life quirkless up till now. The 1A teacher did some sort of quirk test and despite passing he expelled her. Because she did not use her quirk, even though passing a quirk test through sheer physical strength is impressive as far as I am concerned." Itsuka Kendo gave him the cleanest explanation she could, as the green-haired girl was clearly not capable of it in the moment. That is until the end of it, where she slowly stopped as the overflowing rage from her teacher was scaring her. For Midnight Sensei part, she looked surprised to see that the 1A teacher did something like that before hugging Midoriya tighter, seemingly bringing them back to reality as she tried even harder to comfort them, making Kendo more worried. Vlad King, noticing how scared his student was, calmed down before taking a deep breath. "Sorry about that. Izuku Midoriya, report to Class 1B tomorrow morning. You are not expelled, understood?" He asked them as they nodded. With that he sent the two students off, telling them to rest well tonight and apologizing on UA behalf cause he knew Aizawa would never apologize for this even if Nezu tried to force him to. "So why were you practically drowning in anger? Granted I was upset too, but also why were you not surprised before?" Midnight asked if he knew something she didn't, since he did not react to the quirkless part. "After the exam I looked at their file and it said quirkless, which I thought was odd considering what we saw during the exam. So, I asked Nezu afterward and said that based off his observations that in all likelihood they just awakened their quirk during the exam, which made sense why their body was not adjusted to it." He answered her as both her and Snipe nodded yes to his answer to her second question. "The reason I was so angry is that even me, someone who was not even being able to teach them read their file, which based off what he did I can only assume he didn't. That and the inherent discrimination they must have experienced over the years reminded me of my own childhood a bit. Vlad King told his two work colleagues why he got upset receiving silent sympathy from them for the second half. After a few minutes, Midnight left to go on her patrol but asked him to keep her in the loop about this as she was not on speaking terms with Eraserhead for the time being. After hearing that, Nezu office. Third person Pav. Nezu, who was enjoying a cup of tea before finishing his paperwork for the day, was interrupted by Eraserhead and less than a minute later Vlad King. So, all he knew was that Aizawa wanted to expel someone from his class this year, and with it being the only one he was relieved they did not generate paperwork on par with last year's expulsion debacle. This son of a bitch is trying to expel Izuku Midoriya. Vlad shouted before surprising both men as he punched Aizawa, sending him crashing into one of Nezu's office walls. It was moments like this that Nezu remembered why humans made him want to scream his lungs out despite his joy at seeing the bright futures of his students. After that it took him a good few minutes to calm down both grown men. Naturally, before Nezu could finish doing so, Aizawa managed to get in a roundhouse kick on Vlad King, breaking the small glass table by the couches as the blood hero landed on it. But finally they began to make progress. Do you mind telling me why you expelled one of the only two students to defeat the zero-pointer this year? Nezu asked him as he saw the momentary flinch from Aizawa due to his anger at this mess they made. Unable to bear what he thought was unjustified anger towards him due to his counterpart actions, he spoke up to defend himself. They clearly never trained their quirks since they were little, so why should I waste my time training this unjustly overconfident ingrate? Aizawa responded, seeing how Vlad King went slack-jawed and Nezu uncharacteristic sigh. He got worried but made sure not to show it. It should have been obvious from the exam footage that something was off about Izuku Midoriya quirk. But unlike I hoped you would, Vlad was the one to see it and take a look at their file to see they were quirkless. He then asked me about it and realized that they awakened their quirk during the exam, not years before like everyone else, so Vlad knew they would have a hard time. Now before you try to defend your actions, I want you to continue to give me all the details of the tests and how you interacted with them. Nezu told them, seeing Vlad King had recovered at last. What the two men heard over the next few minutes made their blood boil and then freeze repeatedly over the course of the next 15 minutes or so. First their blood boiled at the offenses towards Midoriya, and then it froze when they considered the consequences of his actions. Aizawa, despite me opening the school hero course to the quirkless, your actions make us look racist towards them and would get us sued indefinitely if the Midoriya family took us to court. In fact, because we let the quirkless apply that, we could easily be seen as cruel, and I don't need to tell you this, but UA reputation affects all of hero society as it definitively acknowledged best hero school. If Vlad did not apologize for us already, we would be cooked alive by the media if they ever heard of this. On top of that, you pretty much destroyed their reputation amongst the student body thanks to your little stunt. Nezu told them as it had finally dawned onto Aizawa what he had done to UA by not taking any more than a cursory glance at the students' names and images from their files. I will decide your punishment at a later date, but for now Vlad will take over teaching Izuku Midoriya as her homeroom teacher. We, and by that, I mean me and Vlad, will apologize to them tomorrow and assure them you will not go near them for a bit, as I doubt they want to see you right now. As for you Vlad, any resources you need, ask me for them without hesitation, but do what you must to help them learn to control their quirk. I understand this will take significant time as their body still needs to get used to their quirk. I will have Recovery Girl do a quirk examination like they do for children when they awaken their quirks, though since they're much older she will have to adjust it a bit, so the results may take longer for you to get. Nezu said, dismissing them as he rubbed his temples, worrying about how he would need to make peace with the Midoriya family. Midoriya household. Third person Pav. Getting home both mentally and physically exhausted from his first day at UA, Izuku struggled to push his front door open. Trudging through, his mother came out to the front entrance to greet him. Izuku, how was your? She had stopped upon seeing his puffy eyes and the fact that he was still wearing the female uniform. Sitting him down at the kitchen table, she encouraged him to tell her everything that had happened. Well, like we feared, the security guard our neighbor told us about was at the front gate, so it was a good thing we decided not to take any chances. Izuku told her, letting out a sigh as she nodded with him, unsurprised by her son's bad luck. Then the teacher, instead of going to the opening ceremony, had us do a quirk assessment test out in the athletics field. He then went into how he got changed in the classroom after everyone left to avoid embarrassment. His mother, still quietly listening, nodded along, agreeing he made the right choice by changing away from everyone else. Though that still did not explain why he was still wearing the girl uniform. Then he lectured me, and made fun of me for not being able to use my quirk properly even though I just got it at the entrance exam. He told her, barely keeping himself from starting to cry again as he remembered that part of the day. Letting him take a moment, Inko rubbed her son back to help him keep calm. He said whoever came in last would be expelled, but despite getting 8th place he tried to expel me for not using my quirk even though he knew using it right now would break my bones. Izuku finally began sobbing, but after all of his crying earlier, this only lasted a few minutes before he continued. As for Inko, she was well past being simply upset with them for how they treated her son. In her opinion, if anyone asked her, they should be banned from teaching anyone after that. But one of the students from 1B found me crying in the hallway after and brought me to her teacher. He told me I wouldn't be expelled and to come to 1B starting tomorrow. He made sure to tell her of the good news from today. This indeed made Inko happy to hear that the 1B teacher at least understood what it meant to be a teacher. But hold on a second. Izuku, why did Katsuki not do anything to help you? Inko asked him, to see him get nervous and scoot away a little. Izuku, she said, scooting closer, turning his head to face her and look her in the eyes properly. Well, the thing about that is, Izuku, unable to hide it any longer, told her the truth of Bakugo behavior that day and over the years. As well as the reason why Ua thought that he was female, which was due to a messed up prank Bakugo did when the teacher announced both of them were applying to UA. Bakugo had swiped Izuku application paper from the teacher and changed the gender part on the application form to female, saying he was weaker than a little girl. Their teacher at the time laughed at it and said that he would fix it later, but clearly, he did not do that as he said he would. The horrified and pale look on her face spoke volumes of what keeping this information from her meant to her. I'm sorry for not noticing on my own, Izuku. Inko cried as she pulled him into a deep hug, too scared now to let go of her baby boy. It did not take a genius to figure out why she did not notice his injuries over the years, so much so that even she realized it. As much as she said she loved her son unconditionally like a mother should, his quirkless status even got to her. That and her desire not to lose her only friend in Japan, Mitsuki, had blinded her from the obvious signs before her. From now on you stay away from him and the rest of the Bakugo family, as I will be cutting ties with them tomorrow. That means no calling him by his nickname anymore either if he confronts you again. Got it? She sternly told him now that she had calmed down enough to think straight. After telling him a few more things, she also made sure to tell him to talk to the principal tomorrow to get the uniform situation fixed. UA. Third person POV. Izuku was nervous to say the least as he walked through the front gates, fortunately not getting anywhere near as many catcalls as he did yesterday. Though he did duck behind some bushes when he spotted Bakugo. When he got out of his hiding spot, Kendo was there to greet him. Hey Midoriya, why are you hiding in the bushes? Kendo asked them in hopes she would be understood by them. Izuku, not wanting to risk Bakugo hearing despite the wide gap between them that he knew would make it impossible, simply pointed to them. Following his finger and line of sight, she spotted who he was pointing and recalled how rude Bakugo was to her in the test area they shared. I got it, so that guy is a bully, huh? But don't worry, I'm here for you, so let's hurry to class. She said, grabbing his hand, normally not bold enough to do this to a guy. But since she thought Izuku was a girl, she did not hesitate to do so. A bit embarrassed to be holding a girl's hand like this, he had to concentrate to keep himself from blushing and stuttering like he normally would. Getting to the classroom, everyone was there already and greeted them. Well, they greeted Kendo anyway, as none of them knew who he was or why he was here. Kendo, who is this? Abara Shiozaki asked her, curious as to why this green-haired girl with freckles was with here, as they already had a class of 20. Abara, however, would not get answer immediately, as one of the class foreign exchange students ran up to the two, grabbing a hold of both of Izuku's hands with her own. Are you joining our class? Pony exclaimed, happy at the idea that she could speak her native tongue freely with someone else in the class like she did back home. I am, though originally, I was in class 1A, but that is a bit of a long story. Izuku laughed awkwardly, still not quite wanting to discuss it in detail with anyone other than his mom or All Might right now. They said they would talk to him after school today, and that All Might was told by the principal what more or less happened. For everyone else other than Kendo, they were shocked to find another half-American half-Japanese student in the school like Pony. To make things a bit simple, as it is a bit of a long story and class will be starting soon. All I will say for now is that they used to be part of 1A but were discriminated against by their teacher and he tried to expel them. So now they will be in our class. Kendo told them just as their teacher came in. All right everyone except Midoriya, take a seat. I need to bring them to talk with the principal, so homeroom today will be spent deciding on your class representative while I have that meeting. It looks like everyone is here, so I will skip roll call today. Come on Midoriya, we need to go over some specifics with the principal about how to proceed. Vlad King said, making sure he said the last sentence in English so they could understand. It seemed that between his father working in America, his perfect English scores, and the fact that Kendo told him they only spoke English so far, both principal as well as teacher assumed Izuku was like Pony. Surprised they knew English so well, he figured they were just speaking English much more than his last school, since heroes needed to learn it as it was the most common language on the planet. However, if Principal Nezu and Vlad King had looked past his middle school, they would have already realized that Izuku was born in Japan. This little tidbit of information would be discovered only after they finally talked with him. So, but sir, should they not be here to vote with us about this? Monoma asked his teacher, genuinely feeling bad for the girl for those snobs in 1A treating her like dirt. It's okay, really. Izuku told them, not sure why everyone looked impressed with them. The reason they were impressed with him was that they assumed Japanese was his second language like it was for Pony. As such, his clear pronunciation without any hint of an accent was impressive in their eyes. Agreeing to it since Izuku himself said so, they let their teacher and new classmate go, barely getting the class representatives decided before launching into another kind of debate. Nezu office. Third person Pav. Sitting across from the mouse principal was Izuku with his new teacher Vlad King beside the principal, both giving him assuring smiles. My apologies young Midoriya that this is how we are meeting for the first time. I was hoping that we would meet under more pleasant circumstances. Nezu said, happy to see some of the tension leave from the young lady sitting before him. Both him and Vlad King had decided to speak English during this meeting to make sure she fully understood them. I can assure you that you will not have an expulsion on your record, just a normal transfer from 1A to 1B, so your record as a student won't be damaged. Well, any further anyways, my apologies if this is personal, but I noticed something very odd in your records from middle school. Nezu asked her, worried about how her past school experience may have twisted her up on the inside. What had him worried was that in their file she had disciplinary issues on an almost weekly basis since middle school. All of these incidents stated they were the one attacking other students out of jealousy of their quirks. More specifically, Katsuki Bakugo was named in almost all of them as the victim who simply defended himself. But with what they saw in the entrance exam and what Aizawa described during the quirk assessment tests of his, this made no sense whatsoever. It was also odd that if they were supposedly attacking the other students so often, then how were they not expelled but only given bad marks on their records? Well, the thing is, Izuku froze for a moment before relaying to them what he told his mother about his middle school experience and Bakugo. Not noticing their faces as he was focused on keeping it together, he did not see the shock and horror on their faces, very similar to his mother's own expression. Nezu and Vlad were, to put it simply, disturbed that this middle school almost let someone as mentally unstable as Katsuki Bakugo apply, with staff even recommending him. Then again, all of those recommendations were clearly lies when they noticed the discrepancies earlier with Midoriya. But to think that this person went as far as to torture someone for years like they did and not see what they were doing was wrong, wanting to become a hero, this had disturbed them greatly. But when Izuku got to the part about the gender on the form being changed by them, they focused again, realizing something. My apologies, but you're a boy. Then why did you wear the female uniform without complaints? Vlad King asked them as that was the one thing that he really could not fathom a reason why. When Izuku told them about his neighbor and the security guard, they asked for the name of the neighbor and remembered the student. Now understanding why they had so many absences on their record now made sense, and also meant they needed to call them and apologize for this. Nezu also made sure to fire the security guard at the end of the day and make sure word got around for what he did and hid from them, assuring they ruined his career in security for anywhere. My apologies you had to suffer like that. I never approved of such a thing, but I will make sure you will not need to deal with them again. The uniform will take a few days, so until then you can wear the gym uniform, as we always keep a few spares of every size for students in case they damage them during quirk practice. I will have your new student ID ready by the end of the day, so come to my office after school to pick it up. Nezu told them, going into the system and adjusting their student file and sending the info to the library to begin making his new student ID. Sadly, for them, Izuku was not done. Sorry to tell you this, but my mom said she would be coming in Friday to talk to you no matter what. Izuku told them, seeing the momentary dread on their faces before they composed themselves. This was when Vlad King stepped up to tell him what was to come. Since you just got your quirk, I will help you after school starting the day after tomorrow to do extra training to help you learn how to use it. I know that your body will likely require months to adjust to it. So that is why we will only do serious training in 2 weeks, so that way if you break your arm or leg, recovery girl can heal you before the sports festival. Tomorrow, she will give you a quirk examination to help me figure out how exactly your quirk works. Vlad King said with as much confidence as he could muster after hearing about their disturbing past. Unsure of how to feel about this, as he did not want to leak All Might's secret, the hero had walked in, using his skinny form. All Might! Izuku exclaimed before covering his mouth. The blonde hero simply laughed at this, waving their hand in a way so as to indicate for them not to worry about it. The entire staff already knows of my circumstances, so don't worry. Nezu told me what happened yesterday with Aizawa. So, I will assist Vlad here in training you to control your new power. All Might told them, causing Izuku to relax but causing the other two people in the room to raise an eyebrow at him. What? All Might asked them, not knowing why they were staring at him like that. As much as I am curious about your relationship to them, as you seem close, I am more curious at the moment as to why you are speaking Japanese with them when you are even better with English than present Mike. Vlad King said, unsure of why he would not speak in the language most comfortable to them. Well, is it not natural to speak with someone in their first language when it is your first language as well? He asked the blood-quirked hero back in confusion. This had caused them all one by one to look at Midoriya. It is true I am just as fluent in English as I am in Japanese, but everyone else speaking English to me, so I assumed I had to respond back in English. Izuku told them, causing a new conversation to occur about the language mix-up. Finding out why he had spoken English to Kendo when he first met, it all seemed too ridiculous to be true if they were outsiders to this situation. Izuku also freaked out when he was told his status still said quirkless, and he realized he forgot to update it. Nezu assured them, however, that it was no problem for him to fix, as it was probably better to do it through the school than as a random individual calling the government agency in charge of these things. Anyway, why exactly do you two know each other so well? Vlad King asked them, now partly expecting something crazy like they were secretly father and son. It was then he got the tale of how the two met originally, shocked that Midoriya moved on instinct to save someone, especially that Hellspawn torturing him. Seeing now why Nezu said All Might would help made sense. It also made sense how they thought they could get into UA without a quirk. With all of that done, they sent Midoriya away with Vlad King back to class as Nezu spoke with All Might about Midoriya past. Nezu had never seen the gentle giant of a man before him, virtuous enough to almost be called a saint, get so angry before. Though he understood why. After all, Midoriya was his successor, the next symbol of peace, and therefore his responsibility to oversee with the time he had left. Telling him to keep calm and teach 1A normally, he told them to go, as he would be calling Aizawa and Bakugo to his office shortly. When Aizawa and an irate Bakugo came in, he could tell Aizawa knew roughly what would occur. Greetings you two, now take a seat as I have something important to talk about. Nezu told them, scaring Aizawa as he always offered tea to people. Unless of course they had done something to incur his wrath. I am about to tell you what I have been told, and you young Bakugo will tell me if it is true or not. He said, going into what Midoriya had described to him but keeping their name out of it. Aizawa was visibly shaken, which was an extremely rare sight. However, Nezu expected this along with the growling response from Katsuki Bakugo. Did that quirkless Deku try to get sympathy from you by lying? All I did was put the weakling in his place, since he obviously can't be a hero without a quirk. Bakugo yelled at them, essentially admitting to what he did. However, this was worse than simply admitting it, as he made it clear he was racist towards the quirkless. Aizawa actually regretted almost thinking someone like this had what it took to be a hero. I will give you this note to give to your parents. You are not allowed to come back to school till after I have had a meeting with you and both your parents. Except for this Friday, any day before or after will work for me, so they are welcome to come anytime once the school day starts. Nezu told him, as Bakugo blew up a chunk off his desk in rage at this. You can't do this to me. I'm going to be the next #1 hero. Bakugo got up to the principal face, screaming at them. Unfortunately for them, Aizawa could not pull them away or warn them in time before Nezu struck. Literally, as he gave the young man a stun gun to the neck, causing them to fall on the floor convulsing for a minute before picking themselves back up. I can, and will do so, especially after how you just threatened your principal like you did. Despite what your middle school taught you, I will tell you how the real world works. Your quirk is not that special compared to other heroes. You are a dime a dozen that can easily be replaced in this industry. And keep in mind that with everything you have done to Midoriya, you could easily get yourself sent to prison for what you have done if they decide to press charges, so I would be careful if I were you. Nezu finished his speech, putting the note in his front pocket of his uniform jacket before getting Aizawa to drag the shocked student out of there. Whether or not Nezu skipped over the difficult process of how the courts would have to go through to charge him as an adult despite his young age, well, oops, perhaps it was possible the intelligent animal could forget something from time to time, or this could just be another game of his to play with the parents when they come in to talk with him. Ooh, a Class 1B, third person POV. After they decided their class reps, Kendo, who knew them already, well, a bit more than everyone else, anyone was at front. With Pony beside her, as they felt having the other half Japanese, half American give them her opinions would be invaluable. Kendo made sure to let them know the full story as she knew it, which was not entirely wrong, so it was close enough that when they would find out the truth, they would likely not change their minds. Okay everyone, Class 1A is probably going to target her for bullying and by extension us from now on. So, make sure not to wander the halls outside of class hours without at least 2 other classmates with you. Agreed. Kendo told them to make sure they all stayed safe from the other class. All of them agreed. The second issue is helping her get used to school here in Japan, as unlike Pony, she had a really rough first experience, so be gentle with her. She told them all again, receiving agreements from them not knowing the truth of Izuku long school life in Japan. Pony for her part was going to do everything they could to support their fellow American transferee. After a few more back and forth discussions, the 2 people they had been waiting for entered, with her wearing the gym uniform. All right everyone, before things get too out of hand, since it looks like you had a meeting beyond what I instructed for you to do, listen well. Vlad King said, pointing with his head to the chalkboard they wrote some notes on, embarrassing them all. Though they were all shocked to find out Izuku was a boy this whole time and a watered-down version as to why he was mistaken for girl, this did not change much. Nor did their apparently non-American heritage affect things when it came to protecting them from bullying. Pony did still try to be the closest to him, as his English was still no different than the average American. With that, his second first day had started off well, with his class supporting him for the first time in his life instead of torturing him. The rest of the day fortunately ended without him being seen by 1A. Tamura was sipping a glass of whiskey on the rocks as he went over the basic quirk info the twerk they had in 1A get for them. How the hell did a kid with a quirk powerful enough to destroy a 0-pointer get expelled so quickly? He asked himself out loud in a sarcastic way, as the spy had told them why from the beginning. Kurogiri, who knew this, kept quiet cleaning a glass, though it did not stop him from wondering how the child's supposed ego held up. Who knows, maybe we can track the kid down and use them to break All Might by having them join the raid. He spoke this time to Kurogiri, wanting his opinion on the idea. Naturally, he knew his sensei was likely listening in the background from his monitor, but knew they only spoke when they felt he needed their advice. As interesting as it would be to do so, I doubt that we will get a chance to meet them before the raid, since our spy did not see a reason to follow her after class. Kurogiri said, hating to deflate Tamura metaphoric bubble. Yeah, fair enough. Well, in any case, let's get to work on finalizing the details for tomorrow info gathering. Tamura told him, as he was still unsure if the morning or nighttime would end up being better. Bakugo household. Third person Pav, grumbling to himself as he went through the front door of his house during the early evening, as he spent a few hours at an arcade burning off steam. However, as soon as he entered, he got not the screaming he expected from his mother, but her slapping him across the face and dragging him into the living room by his uniform jacket right shoulder. Throwing him onto the single seat in the living room where his father usually sat in silence, he finally noticed how his mother's eyes looked all puffy, as if she had been crying. What the hell is the... He, instead of getting yelled at by her, simply got slapped again, this time much harder, almost knocking him out of his chair. Why the hell did I get a call from Inko telling me she was ending our friendship because you have been bullying Izuku for years, BORDERLINING on torture? Mitsuki yelled at her son, silencing him as her husband pulled her back, calming his distraught wife down. Katsuki, I want you to tell us why you thought it was okay to use your quirk to abuse Izuku like some sort of villain. Masaru asked his son, hoping to get some sort of reasoning, no matter how convoluted or twisted it was, from them. Katsuki Bakugo, the ever so prideful person, even with his parents, huffed before responding in a quieter voice than before, as he did not like the look his dad gave him when he reprimanded him, which was rare. The quirkless idiot would never shut up about being a hero, even though he should have known it was impossible. I was just trying to put him in his place and show him where he belonged. He told his parents, as he was very annoyed. They could not understand something as simple as he was great, and Deku was not. Both his parents, however, were shocked to hear her son say something so twisted, considering all he talks about is becoming the next #1 hero. This was when the note had fallen out of his pocket and his mother picked it up as both she and her husband read it, scared of what could have been written in it. You got yourself suspended on the first day of school and you might get expelled. Mitsuki burst with anger at her son's stupidity she was reading about. TCH. The stupid rat principal said that I can't go back to classes till you have damn talk with him. He said, getting pulled up out of the seat from his mother. You will not be allowed to leave the house till after we have that meeting on Saturday, do you understand? Now go to your room, you will be getting no dinner tonight. Mitsuki said, cracking her knuckles when it looked like he was about to yell back at her, shutting him up. Her husband followed up with a shake of his head and a disappointed look in his eyes that sent the youngest of the Bakugo household silently stomping up to his room. What are we going to do, Masaru? If Inko decides to press charges for Get Hero School, his whole life could be over. She said in despair as she fell onto the couch, sitting covering her face with her hands. If her son got a criminal record cause of this, then he could kiss indecent jobs goodbye along with any hope of becoming a hero. Masaru sat down beside his wife, wrapping his arms around her, rubbing her back as she began crying a bit at the thought of her son in prison. All we can do now is get him back on the right path and do everything we can to minimize the charges against him. He told her in a soothing voice, upset with himself that minimizing the potential criminal charges was likely all he could do. Since UA along with other hero schools were considered government facilities, depending on what his son did, despite being technically a minor, he could end up getting a few years in a juvenile detention center if it was bad enough. UENTRNACE, Hallways, Class 1A. Third person Pav. Izuku had walked through the front gate, meeting with Kendo and Pony, who seemed to be waiting for him. Hey you two, you know you don't need to wait here for me, right? Izuku told them, hoping what he saw on the board was a joke. But he now realized they were dead serious about being his bodyguards at school, even though he thought it sounded like overkill. I would like to say we know we don't need to, but it looks like we were right. Kendo paused for a moment halfway through her sentence before pulling Izuku behind her and Pony. This is when Izuku noticed he just narrowly avoided a hand grabbing his shoulder from behind where he stood a second ago. You have been expelled already. How dare you trespass on school grounds? And out of school uniform no less. Ida exclaimed, chopping his hands in his usual robot-like manner. Granted, he was still giving Izuku a stern glare. That is before Togaru Kamakiri in all his green-colored rage grabbed Ida by the shoulder from behind him before kicking him in the family jewels. Ida collapsing a moment after Kamakiri removed his foot was turned onto his back by his attacker as they glared at him with disdain. Hey asshole, save the lectures for yourself, let's go you three before more show up. He said, pointing to the entrance with his thumb. Good call, but next time maybe just go for a gut punch. Though I appreciate you shutting him up quickly, making him collapse at the front gate like this will probably cause some backlash later. Kendo told him, rubbing the back of her head in frustration as she imagined 1A barging into their classroom later. Togaru however did not care and was always ready to prove he was stronger than anyone else. Pony simply called Class 1A jerks just as ready to follow Kamakiri lead. Wow, Kamakiri really is like Bakugo, he is like Bakugo. But he is semi-friendly and respectful to his classmates outside of a fight. Izuku thought of remembering how intense he got during 1B doing the quirk apprehension test yesterday during afternoon classes. Though Togaru Kamakiri is every bit as intense and only slightly less foul-mouthed than Bakugo, he still tried to be friendly with his classmates. Even if Shiozaki was constantly scolding him for his contemptible language, Kamakiri however did not care much about it as he was used to being scolded for it. Making their way through the halls, careful to take a slightly longer route on the other side of the floor opposite the 1A classroom to avoid bumping into them on the staircase. Kendo, Pony, Kamakiri, and Izuku in the center made it to class with no more issues. Hey everyone, fair warning, Kamakiri handed the glasses guy from 1A his ass so we might get an interruption later. Izuku said, laughing awkwardly as Kamakiri huffed with his arms crossed at his statement like he did nothing wrong. Which in later on in retrospect was, as Kendo said, was just a bit too far, but it could also not be denied that Tenya Ida deserved every bit of the pain he felt that morning. His classmates at the time who were there all just sighed at this, honestly half expecting him to deal the first blow in this war between their classes. Finding Tenya Ida struggling to get up at the gate, Ochako used her quirk to help him up after she ran up to him. Ida, what happened? She barely kept to mild yelling at this sight of one of her classmates hurt. Green, thug. Ida barely got out as he huffed, getting air back into his lungs at last. Green thug. Ochako was confused as to what he meant but decided to hurry themselves up to class. Halfway through he was good enough to walk on his own, so she let him down, though he was still a bit pale. Perhaps the strain of zero gravity on top of a kick to his balls courtesy of Kamakiri earlier was not a good combination for him. When they brought him to the classroom, Momo ran up to them in shock upon seeing how pale Ida was, as he walked alongside Ochako. Aizawa was quietly resting in his sleeping bag like a caterpillar in a cocoon, like always, was listening closely to the conversation. Why is Ida so pale? Momo exclaimed in shock as she checked Ida all over. I was assaulted by a green-haired insect-like boy with a mohawk. I assume he was in 1B given his fighting abilities. Ida said, not realizing anyone could have kicked him from behind like that in the moment due to his pride blinding him quite a bit. You were just attacked. That is so not manly, bro. Hiroshima said, shaking his head at how unheroic the other class was. Aizawa, however, who was hearing this, thought something was odd about this. After all, as aggressive as Vlad was, he made it clear to his students to never bully anyone. Right when I was lecturing the girl who got expelled on the first day about sneaking back onto campus and insulting the school further by not following the dress code. Ida said, confusing them all as to why they would come back. After all, 1A was the best, so getting expelled from them should have ended her student career. It was when Ida revealed this bit of information that Aizawa caught on to what had really happened this morning. So, Ida, in his so assured self-righteousness that it was stupidity at this point, did not realize he was harassing another student, therefore he was the bully in this case. Aizawa thought internally, sighing at how, despite coming from a respectable long lineage of heroes, was already causing problems. This also made sense to Aizawa as to why someone from Vlad's class would just, randomly, assault someone like that. As much as he wanted to derail this train now, if he told them why Izuku Midoriya was still here, then they would begin to not trust him. Nezu told him to keep the details of why Bakugo was not in class a secret for now. The only way to divert this inevitable train was to explain that he made a critical error in judgment with Midoriya. But if they started doubting him, then they would eventually and rather swiftly force Nezu's hand, causing him to explain the truth to them about Bakugo's situation to prevent a class war between the two groups of students. This meant he could not tell them yet why Midoriya was still here despite him trying to expel them already. The last thing UA needed was for rumors to spread that one of their students had technically committed criminal acts. Even though they would normally be trailed as minors, it is beside the point as far as the media was concerned. Even now Nezu and Hound Dog were using their spare time to do thorough background checks on all the hero course students to be safe. So, all he could do was hope they would show some self-restraint and listen to him when he told them not to make the situation worse. All right everyone, once class starts I will tell you something important, so calm down for now, he said, not wanting to repeat what he had to say twice by saying it now. Lunch time. Third person Pav. Izuku was lucky and ended up getting katsudon for lunch today, so he was cheered up after this morning's confrontation with Tenya Ida. Everyone in 1B got together at the same 3 tables they pushed together, but everyone sat beside someone specific. It made sense to them sit beside someone who had more to talk about. In his case that was Pony on his left, who he talked about American heroes with him in English, and Monoma on his right, who joined in a bit about their quirks, though in Izuku's opinion he needed to work on his English a bit more. Monoma was eating a simple lunch of steamed rice, miso soup, and grilled fish, while Pony was eating something more akin to home in the form of a burger. "Hey Pony," Tetsu asked her, taking his Japanese slowly for her, continuing after she nodded yes. "Your quirk is partially some sort of cow mutation, right? So, does that mean you are committing cannibalism by eating that burger?" he asked her, grinning. It took Pony a moment to process his question before she realized that he just called her a cow. Since he was sitting across from her, she kicked him in the shin, making him drop his fork onto his plate as he clutched his bruised shin. "I am a horse, not a cow," Pony exclaimed, pouting before turning her head to the side. This caused almost everyone to laugh at his mistake after Izuku translated the English for everyone to understand his screw-up. "In my defense, I want to point out horses don't usually have horns, but cows do," Tetsu said as Kamakiri jokingly smacked the back of his head, chuckled at his excuse, now joining in his classmate laughter. This laughing, however, would soon come to an abrupt end as Kirishima slammed his fist on the table with an irate Ida and an exasperated yet stern-looking Momo. Unlike most of her classmates, she realized something odd was going on, but decided to keep it to herself till she had an actual explanation to give them. Still, she came with them to make sure that no one got violent and went against their teacher warning. "Can we help you?" Kendo asked as she stood up, noticing how Izuku shrunk back as their attention was on him and Kamakiri. "Aizawa-sensei expelled you already, so why are you with 1B? Did you tell them, and their teacher, some sort of lie to get in their class? Cause that is so not manly," Kirishima said to Izuku, who was currently being held by Pony, who looked ready to launch her horns on a moment's notice. What Kirishima said crossed a nerve with all of them, as after getting to know Izuku a little could easily tell he would never do something like they described. "They told us no lies, though there was a minor misunderstanding about their gender due to a paperwork issue with the school, but that is it." Kendo tried her best to keep calm, as the last thing she needed was for the rest of the school to see the two hero courses fighting it out in the cafeteria. Ida had serious doubts that someone as rude of them would not try to deceive the students of 1B. The fact that they are violent fools in his eyes made it seem all the easier to deceive them. "Looks like I will need to help these delinquents see the truth, even if they do not deserve it. As a hero, it is my job to help them," Ida thought, still not realizing how rude he himself was being with how he rushed to judge them. "Despite the fact you ganged up on me this morning with that sneak attack from him over there," he said, nudging his head towards Kamakiri, who needed to be held down by Tetsu. "It is my responsibility as a future hero to help you see how badly you are being deceived and set you back on the right path," Ida said, seeming proud of his speech, that is till Monoma started laughing holding his gut. Needless to say this offended Ida greatly. Thanks, but no thanks, if anyone needs help being set back on the right path it is you. Monoma said, wiping the tears from his eyes as he stopped laughing and got up. Now even Momo was starting to get annoyed with how rude he was being towards them by laughing at them. You are the only delinquents here, I'm afraid. Harassing us. Judging a fellow former classmate without knowing them. Saying we are the ones that need to change our ways to fit your ideals. You know, at first, I was upset I got into 1B, but if arrogant fools like you is what makes up Class 1A, then 1B is a far better place to be in terms of training to be a hero. And unlike your teacher, our teacher may encourage a rivalry between classes, but at least he makes sure we don't go as far as to become bullies like all of you. Monoma finished his speech, catching his breath, excited to show the school which class had the actual future top heroes in it. His classmates, despite finding him to be a bit egotistic himself, could not help but smile and agree with him. Even Kendo, who wanted to hold back the fighting, could not argue with his speech, so instead walked over to him and pulled him back down into his seat. My apologies for what my classmate had said. However, he was not wrong about you clearly trying to abuse your status as the perceived better hero class. Kendo said, making it clear his point in case they had lost sight of it during his rambling. Momo was now beyond miffed and was seeing red herself after being insulted so blatantly like that to her face by them after they injured her classmate. But before she could give them a good piece of her mind, the alarms went off, sending the whole cafeteria into a panic. The moment the alarms went off, when the shrill siren hit the student ears, that was when the school had begun filling to the brim with chaos. Left and right people began shoving each other to get to the exits, not even realizing they were trampling each other due to their panic. 1B, however, was the only ones not in a panic, as Izuku had stopped them, recalling the reporters from earlier this morning. Everyone stop, it's just the reporters. Izuku tried to yell out to everyone, but it only reached his classmates. What do you mean? Kendo had to yell to make sure he could even hear her over all the screaming and the alarm. According to Midnight Sensei, WHO was waiting for the students by the gates. They are only interested in getting information on All Might teaching the first years. Because I was wearing the gym uniform, they probably thought I was a second or third year and let me go through without any trouble. So it was probably one of them that just broke through the barrier when getting impatient. There is probably no villain attack right now. Izuku finally finished, taking a breath while it sunk into the others. All right, 1B, get yourselves together and wait this out calmly. Kendo told them all, figuring it was safer to wait here at their table than go into that stampeding mob. She would also be proven right, as Power Loader had to fix several broken doors and Recovery Girl had to deal with dozens of cases of broken arms or legs accompanied with major concussions. Ooh, a Recovery Girl, third-person POV. Despite the protests of the other students of Class 1B, Vlad King had to send his students home, promising them he would drive Izuku home. Nezu had recommended to the student body that everyone travel as far as possible towards their homes as possible with at least one other person. Nothing could wrong with Vlad King promise, right? Well, on to the quirk examination after everyone left. However, All Might was the one there, not Vlad King, as for now Nezu decided not to let him in on the full picture. Not out of spite or distrust, mind you, but more so as Aizawa had dumped a metaphoric pile of hot garbage on his desk in terms of legal issues that needed his full focus. As such, he could not go through the long and complicated loops that came with One for All, so he decided to save it till the Midoriya issue was handled on hopefully Friday. Nezu would need to make sure to have Recovery Girl give him a watered-down explanation in her report so as to not disclose the truth of One for All yet. That, and he had a feeling about something the symbol of peace may or may not have done yet. All right, young man, first off, I have known Toshinori's secret about his quirks since he was given it by his master when he was your age, so we can speak openly here. Recovery Girl said, seeing Izuku relax, knowing that he would not need to worry about sharing anything he shouldn't. Now to simplify it for you about how Toshinori has explained it to you, it converts the metabolic energy from your body natural process into kinetic energy, resulting in what is perceived as enhanced strength, she said, stopping as Izuku was staring at her wide-eyed. His pupils practically turning into stars as he mumbled about how interesting the quirk was, writing something down in a notebook. he pulled from somewhere she did not see. Toshinori, you did explain how your quirk functioned, right? I mean, I explained it to you when you were younger. Recovery Girl asked him with a sense of dread. I kind of forgot to tell him. Toshinori Yagi said as one of his former teachers was glaring at him, indicating she was going to smack him with her cane. Yes, she most definitely ended up smacking his head the moment he raised his hands to defend himself, which he then used to rub the spot on his head where she hit him. This was what Nezu was worried about, albeit very little compared to the Aizawa generated he was dealing with right now. Letting out a sigh of frustration, she noticed Izuku was shaking like a leaf in the wind. Realizing that she was scaring him, she put her cane down and patted his shoulder, calming him. Here is the same explanation I gave Toshinori when he was your age. It converts the energy your body creates during the Krebs cycle of your body metabolism that concerns the oxidation of fats and sugars into kinetic energy. What people see as destructive punches are gusts of powerful wind made from his high-speed movements as the transfer of that energy and when it passes through the air faster than the speed of sound. However, there is one special function of the quirk that defies physics. Recovery Girl said, seeing him stop tilting his head. This made the old woman chuckle before casually whacking Toshinori on the head again before continuing. Normally energy is transferred between what you come in contact with and the air itself. This is due to the commonly known fact that energy cannot be destroyed or created but only transformed, well, for anyone who has taken an elementary school or higher level science class at least. She said, expecting the same question Toshinori asked her when Nana explained it to him. By what does that have to do with this special function and how does it defy physics? Izuku asked, now confused. But with this quirk, a small portion of that energy every time you use it goes to a third place. A sort of core of energy that when he transferred the quirk to you, he transferred this core as well, but unlike the last two, the energy stays in this core permanently, making the quirk baseline strength more powerful than when you had received after you pass it on to someone else. It is also this baseline energy source that you tap into every time you use the quirk, however the energy added to this core does not get used up when you tap into it. Think of it as more of a way to jumpstart and support the process in your body that it accelerates to get the power you use. She stopped, winded, taking a sip of water, making sure to whack her former student on his head again as it looked like he was about to say something stupid. Izuku, after writing that down, thought for a moment before turning to the open window, catching their attention. I think I know how to limit my power for training for now, but I really am not going to like it. Izuku sighed as he realized how bad these next few days of meals were going to be. With that, he began explaining to them how, based off her explanation, slowing down his metabolism could help him limit his power output till he gets fully adjusted to it. The method he suggested was a high-carbohydrate-fueled diet, that at first, they both shot down, but then he posed a different question to them. Then how am I supposed to train with it before half of the school year passes by and my body is adjusted to it? 'Cause I doubt it will only take me a few months like most 4-year-olds. He said, making a fair point to the two heroes who relented. With that, they used Recovery Girl medical knowledge, as well as All Might undergraduate degrees in health and nutritional sciences. Which was a surprise to even Izuku before he remembered that no one except a few knew what All Might's actual name was, so it made sense why he never knew. That, and based on how he looks now, no one would ever associate him with health and nutritional expertise. After some back and forth, they decided what combination of vitamins to start off with and decided to adjust accordingly as the month went on. But they agreed to only do this health-risking experiment for a month at most before making him return to his regular diet, hoping this 1 month would be enough to help accelerate his body adjustment to the quirk. Oh yeah, so what should I call my quirk? We still need to give Principal Nezu a name to submit, Izuku asked them as they realized they still needed to do that part before the end of the week, thanks to the Quirk Registration Agency, or QRA for short, demanding a fast response. In the end, he decided to call it Metabolic Boost, since using the quirk increases his metabolic rate to create such extreme boosts in energy. Also, naming it One for All officially would be too dangerous, according to All Might, as a powerful villain he once was forced to kill that knew of his quirk unique trait. If their minions are still around, they may have access to government files somehow, so it was best to err on the side of caution. This also meant he would need to eat a lot more once he got into serious training with it. Mustafu streets. Third person POV. When Vlad King had promised Inko Midoriya he would escort her son home to be safe, he did not expect the most dangerous drive of his life home after work. On the way to Izuku Midoriya apartment they had come across 4 villain fights, 3 in-progress robberies, and 2 drug deals getting busted. The robberies and the drug deals he had to stop as Izuku told him he was worried that another hero might not arrive in time. Saying he was fine with being a little later if it would not be a bother to his teacher, the blood hero himself stopped them, quickly handing them off to officers that were patrolling nearby or had been called to the scene by another passerby. Shortly realizing in a moment of despair that now he would need to fill out and send in 5 incident reports tomorrow to the HPSC as he was the one who took down the criminals. On the other hand, he would get a small but unexpected pay bonus from the HPSC for doing the emergency on-site captures. I thought this area was supposed to be safe. Vlad King asked aloud, wondering why a formerly quiet area was seeing this much activity at this time. When he used to live in the area about 17 years ago before he moved to his current apartment, all this place ever saw an occasional mugging 2 or 3 times a week. So, when he heard recently from a colleague that this area was a hot spot for incidents, he was worried for Izuku and his mother living in such an area. I know, right? This is even quitter than usual, Izuku said aloud as Vlad King, despite his years of teaching and fighting villains, almost slammed his brakes on the next light in shock. He thinks this is even more quiet than it should be, he exclaimed internally as he gave a very subtle and unnoticeable side glance to his student while still focusing on his driving. Deciding it was probably better not to get a definitive number, he prodded with a general question. Hey Midoriya, how many crimes do you come across, crimes or fights, on a daily basis? Vlad King carefully asked them. Izuku took a moment to think about this, making the man worry even more about what the general answer would be. Normally throughout a regular day I end up coming across something around 15 to 30 villains on average, I say. So, I really struggle to get to school on time when about 40 or 50 show up on my route, but luckily, I only tend to encounter villains every other day, so it's fine, Izuku said with a smile as something became abundantly clear to Vlad King. This kid is a villain magnet. He is the one somehow attracting all of the danger to the area, he internally screamed while keeping his neutral poker face on to not alarm Izuku. All right, this is your apartment complex, right? Vlad King asked his student, hoping the extra work and danger would finally stop. Yeah, it is, thank you sir. Izuku bowed to him as he went up to his apartment. Luckily for him, his teacher was watching to make sure he was okay, just barely using his blood in time to form a chain to wrap it around the hand of a drunk man about to grab Izuku from behind. Now having to take them to the police station on the route to his house so they can throw him in the drunk tank for the night. Midoriya House Hild. Third person POV. Izuku had finally come home at about the time Inko had been expecting him to get here, as she was told they were examining his quirk today. That and he had an unfortunate habit of drawing in villains wherever he was. So, to make sure no villains attacked whenever she went shopping, she would always go to the grocery store on the opposite end of the area they lived, away from his schools. How are you doing, Izuku? Did you figure out how your quirk worked? She asked her son, hoping he would not hurt himself again with it anytime soon. Telling her the basic function of it and how he was going to test a new diet for the next month to stabilize it made her happy, as it seemed that his first teacher at UA was one of the likely few bad ones, if hopefully only bad one. Then telling her of all the crimes they came across, a thought crossed her mind along with a silent prayer. This nice teacher sounds like he got lucky for a first-time experience with Izuku bad villain luck. Inko thought, not realizing her son considered his luck with villain encounters the opposite, even though he had no idea it was not a normal encounter rate for most civilians. No, for Izuku all the villain attacks happening near him were just more opportunities to watch heroes fight and add to his hero journal's info about the various pro heroes he saw. League of Villain Bar. Third person POV. Tamura was currently looking over the schedule and saw All Might was scheduled to do a trip to the USJ with Class 1B next week Monday, then on Wednesday with 1A. So, the second place class gets All Might for Rikyū training first. That's odd, but at least it means we get to have more time to prepare to kill the top class along with him. he said, laughing to himself a little at the thought of the news saying how he killed All Might and the supposed best of the next generation. Kurogiri, however, hummed at this, catching his young master attention as they are indicating with a hand motion for him to speak. Is it possible there is friction between All Might and Eraserhead? If so, then it will be even easier for us to kill them both and 13 come Wednesday. Kurogiri said, making Tamura wave him off before responding. Oh please, even if they had perfect teamwork between the three of them. We have a secret weapon made by Sensei and his personal doctor. Those fools do not stand a chance against us, Tamura said, remembering the basic quirk info he got from the snitch. I better get Sensei to ask the brat for more precise info since a few days have passed since their classes started. So, the brat probably knows more useful information by now, he said, as always, with Kurogiri making a mental note to ask the master later when he was not resting later. What the so-called Demon Lord of the Quirk era did in his small window of time he called absolutely private unless for a life or death emergency, always confused both the Misty Butler and the Crusty Gamer. But who were they to question his decision, especially when he was always attentive the rest of his time due to several quirks making it so that he did not need any more than 5 hours of sleep to maintain his current peak condition, not his former. Surrounded by enemies, I stood shoulder to shoulder with Tetsu and Kendo as we were at the forefront of the pack, with my only friend who transferred from 1A to 1B with me at my back. Even so, I saw no reason to worry for once in my life, as I had my classmates, my friends, by my side. Giving a subtle nod to Tetsu and Kendo after locking eyes with each of them by means of a sideways glance, getting nods and smiles from both of them. All right everyone, let's show them that we are heroes, not their prey, I told everyone as we ran into the fight before us in groups. A teacher's lounge. Third person Pav. Nezu walked into the staff lounge as usual to greet his teachers before the day had begun, only to find an exhausted-looking Vlad King filling out paperwork. Naturally the others were watching him, wondering why he had so much paperwork to do this morning when he normally handled all of his paperwork in the evening before going home. Hello Vlad, what exactly is all that paperwork? Did you not drop off the paperwork for Midoriya special training equipment yesterday before taking him home? Nezu questioned, in his opinion the overly colored red hero. Unable to properly respond without doing a mental reset, he dragged his hand over his face, letting out a long sigh. All right, I will tell you, but if any of you laugh instead of giving me helpful advice or your condolences, I will punch you in the face. That includes you as well, Midnight and 13. He said, shocking them all, as it was extremely uncharacteristic of him to threaten to punch a woman who was not a villain. Going into the details, he told them of all of the villain encounters on the way to Midoriya apartment and what they told him about their villain encounters. Well, that is it, so anything you all have to say? He asked, as they were all far too shocked to speak at hearing how Izuku Midoriya himself is like a magnet for villains. Not to say that Izuku Midoriya was a magnet for villains was an understatement among understatements in their collective opinions. All Might and Present Mike, being the only ones not shocked for different reasons, had their eyes closed. All Might was not shocked, as this made him recall his own childhood and his own current luck with villains, so he was not surprised by this, thinking this was normal for a hero. Present Mike, on the other hand, was not shocked cause he was holding back his laughter but eventually gave in. When he did give in, however, Vlad King made good on his word to punch them in the face, sending them flying across the room, landing just short of the wall, sliding into it. My apologies Vlad, I take back what I said jokingly before about giving you a raise after Midoriya first day incident you took care of. Your raise will be finalized before the end of the day, hang in there my fellow hero and teacher. Nezu said, genuinely wishing them luck going forward. I am so sorry for every time I backed up Aizawa whenever he took a verbal jab at you. Midnight said, patting his shoulder before walking over to slap Present Mike awake for his homeroom class. Entrance, hallways. Third person Pav. Izuku guards today were Hiryu Rin, Narengeki Shota, and Reiko Yanagi, 3 people who would later be called the Silent Squad by their other classmates. Waving to them, they waved back to him, nodding as well. Showing each other pictures of martial artists, close-ups of hero support gear, and some of their favorite poetry. However, they barely got to the entrance of the building when they were stopped by 1A, yeah, just kidding. Shiro made a bad attempt at an insult joke at Izuku's expense for what Monoma said yesterday in the lunchroom. While Kaminari had made a dumbass comment so stupid that did not sound racist in his head but was in actuality very offensive. This had made Rin lose his composure, seeing nothing but red for the moment he needed to severely injure such a weaker opponent. Needless to say, Shiro was tied up in his own tape by Yanagi using her quirk on the little bit exposed on his elbows to pull out the amount she needed. This would have been avoided if he did not pull up his sleeve to try and use his quirk to retain the foreign student. Rin had left Kaminari with a concussion, 2 black eyes, and hung them upside down on the pillar by wrapping his pants legs around it while he used Kaminari belt to tighten the section around his ankles so he would not fall out of them. I have a feeling we might get in trouble for this, Izuku said with a light blush, not trying to look directly at Kaminari, chuckling awkwardly as any attempts to fight back in his previous schools only got him in more trouble. Reiko was the only person other than Izuku who could not bring themselves to look at Kaminari. Though for her it was much worse to look at him in his current state than Izuku due to gender differences than simple embarrassment of seeing someone else exposed, to put it mildly. No worries. If Kamakiri did not get chewed out for what he did to someone from a prominent hero family like the Ida family, then I doubt we will get in trouble for these two, Shota said quietly as they hurried to their class. Then he looked to Rin, who now calmed down and seemed to regret going as far as he did on Kaminari when he knew he could have easily knocked them out in one hit. Especially in Rin's case, as he had a fairly justifiable reason for losing his temper like he did. They said, trying to cheer up their classmate. The people they passed in the halls would whisper things as they walked by, about half for rumors that they are picking fights against the other hero class of 1A. While the other half of them were talking about how they were praised as one of the only 3 classes not to panic yesterday. The other 2 being one of the third-year hero classes and the other being one of the support course classes who just quietly locked up the support lab. Since they were in there during the alarm and did so just so they could focus on their work, thinking the hero course just broke something, it was not as great as a feat as it seemed. However, no one would find out till much later on about this, though the rumors had still made them look tougher in the meantime. Fortunately for Kaminari and Shiro, 3 of their classmates found them before classes started as they rushed towards them after hearing some female students scream. Mezo Shoji and Ajiro Kirishima had carried them to the nurse's office, while a red-faced looking away Ochako Uraraka went to class to let the teacher know so they would not be marked as absent or skipping class. A Class 1A. Third person Pav. Aizawa was about to mark 5 students absent when one of the 5 students came in panting as she seemed to have been running to class. I take it you have a reason as to why the only 4 that I was not told in advance would not be coming or not here? Aizawa asked her, already expecting some bad news. When we got to the front gate at the same time, Shoji, Kirishima, and me figured we would walk to class together. But then we heard some other girls' screams and ran to see, Ochako said, beginning to mumble as she awkwardly described what she saw. The other girls in the class were going red in the face as she told them how Kaminari was found to not be wearing underwear to school today, based off of Kirishima and Shoji agreeing it did not look like they were ripped off of him. Great, now one of my students was caught flashing the other female students. Nezu is going to chew me out later, he thought as the class began talking among themselves. From what he was hearing, it seemed that they planned on confronting 1B about this incident. Before anyone tries anything stupid, I would like to point out that anyone who does try anything will get punished harshly for it. The only reason I did not punish Ida was despite the fact he was the aggressor. His humiliation and pain from being stalked by them was worse than a single detention I would have given him for his offense of that kind, Aizawa said, making it clear that Ida had used up their only warning as a class. Technically he should have punished him, Momo, and Kirishima for lunchtime yesterday, but did not, was simply due to him needing to focus on securing the school safety after the break-in. But sir, this is the second time now they have. Momo was about to say attacked them but was cut off by Aizawa, scaring her into silence by glaring at her while activating his quirk. Second what? Second time they attacked you, Aizawa said, doing air quotes with his fingers when he said attacked you. I will find out the reason why later, but in the first instance Ida was the one verbally assaulting them and tried at what one could consider physical assault. A teaching staff will handle this, just like how vigilantism is not approved of by pro-heroes on the streets. Neither do we approve of it in the school. We adults will be the ones to decide and handle the punishment of students around here. Not children who do not know better and have no authority to do it in the first place. Now sit your butts down and get ready for homeroom. Except you Ochako, I need you to go get your classmates from the nurse's office who can return to class. He said as she nodded, running off again before he called out to her not to run in the halls. Will Eraserhead and Vlad King make their way down to my office immediately? Midnight will cover watching 1B for homeroom while Smentos will watch 1A. Nezu called over the intercoms, making him groan in frustration at this year batch of class. Ooh, class 1B. Third person POV. Vlad King came in to see 4 students, with Izuku standing among them seemingly in wait for him. I know I am going to regret this, but what happened this morning? He said, getting the feeling that wherever Izuku went there would be trouble not too far away. Launching into a very fast-paced explanation of what occurred, Izuku just barely managed to tell him before Nezu called him down, saying Midnight would cover for him. All right everyone, I will try my best to convince Nezu to not give you any severe punishments for what you did, but I will give you some form of punishment for taking it as far as you did. Vlad King told his student as he patted them on the shoulder before leaving through the door. Ooh, a Nezu office. Third person POV. Currently sitting before the mouse principal of UA were 2 of the most headache-inducing children he ever had to deal with at UA. Vlad King and Eraserhead, who both looked like they were ready to just give up on everything, one of which this look was unusual to see on them. First thing first, Vlad, tell me what your students had probably told you what happened that led to Denki Kaminari and Hontasiro being tied up at the first floor main entrance, with the former flashing roughly half of the female student body. Nezu said as Vlad began going into a slower and as a result clearer explanation than what Izuku gave him. Aizawa did not get upset at him as he knew how confrontational Class 1A had been since they found out Izuku was in Class 1B after he left Class 1A. As well as how this seemed very plausible with how stupid Kaminari has shown himself to be in class from what he has seen. I see. Normally it would mean suspension for Kaminari for what he did unintentionally to the female portion of the student body as well as his racist comment. But in this case, I will let him off with a week of detention and an exclusion from any and all hero training during that time. Any objections to that, Aizawa? He asked the hero for his input as it was his student in the end. I can see nothing wrong with that punishment, sir. I have made it clear to the rest of the class after this that any further action on their parts will be harshly punished. Aizawa said, regretting that he did not act with them before this happened. Though with the intruder issue, Nezu could not blame him for checking their defenses for any other holes that could be exploited. As for your student Vlad, what do you think will affect them most as a punishment, as I feel a whole week worth of detention is unnecessary? Nezu asked them in hopes to not put any more strain on them than he already has so far. Vlad King took a moment to think about this before answering his boss. Forcing him to sit in the sidelines during hero training for tomorrow and next week will do him good and actually teach him a lesson. Vlad King said as Nezu nodded happily at this. I agree that as a hero student, watching the others train while he is forced to sit it out will feel worse than any detention. Once the students in the infirmary can tell us what happened, once they wake up, that is, if they say anything different from what you told me, I will let you know if we need to change the punishment, Vlad. Nezu said, agreeing with him to send the heroes back to their classes as homeroom was now halfway done at this point. Ooh, a Class 1B. Third person POV. Returning to his class, simply glad he was able to avoid Rin getting any sort of mark on his student record. Vlad King was hoping to relax a little now. Instead, what he saw was Midnight giving out romantic advice like it was some sort of official class, with the boys unable to bring themselves to look at their female classmates. When he saw on the board explained as she was in the middle of telling them how to know how low you should put your hand around their waist when wrapping your arm around them from behind. Oh Vlad, how was the meeting with Nezu and Aizawa? Midnight asked him after enjoying herself due to the reactions his class was giving her. I could ask the same about what was going on with my class. Vlad King tried not to be upset at her as she was actually siding with him instead of Aizawa for once. Oh this. She indicated to the lesson she had written on the board, getting a nod from him. Well, since they are going to spend most of their time in high school focusing on hero training, I figured I could use this rare chance to teach them how to deal with dating problems. Midnight said proudly, as if she was doing them some sort of favor. After a literal just over 3 minutes of getting her out of the room politely, Vlad King could now stand before his class. All right everyone, first thing first is to alleviate any of your fears. Rin will be punished by sitting out the hero foundational lesson tomorrow and all 3 next week. So, no need to worry about this getting on his permanent record. He said, seeing the relief on their collective faces. Whether it was a delayed reaction from him saving them from Midnight due to their embarrassment, shock, or the knowledge their classmates were fine, he could not tell. As for your schedule next week, normally we have only 2 hero foundational classes a week, 1 rescue and 1 fighting. But since we start the first week with only 1 combat lesson, next week you will receive combat on Monday and rescue on Wednesday as well as Friday. After that it will alternate between one or the other on Tuesday and Thursday. Class 1A will be doing rescue training Monday and combat on Wednesday and Friday, so I doubt we will meet them during that period. Vlad King said, seeing someone raise their hand indicating a question for him, so he motioned for them to speak up. Why are they not trying to balance out the rescue training like we are, sir? Kendo asked him, thinking it sounded odd like her other classmates. Vlad King let out a sigh as he pinched his nose, worrying her. She said something wrong. The reason they are not balancing it out is because Aizawa, the Class 1A teacher, sees more value in combat training than in rescue training. I am sure that many of you wanted more combat training than rescue training, thinking rescue training is a waste of time. But trust me, it will benefit you and the civilians you will rescue in the future. He said, pleasantly surprised by their answers. I'm sorry, Sensei, but you're wrong. To be taught how to save lives better is never a waste of time. Abara Shiozaki said, standing up before bowing to him in respect. She is right, sir. When those fools in Class 1A are unable to assist the heroes, they intern with after the sports festival with rescuing people they will regret. Nito Monoma said, flipping his bang to the side while laughing. They're right, sir. No matter what school they go to, I have never seen on the news a hero allowing students to risk taking part in an actual fight. So having better rescue skills will be more useful to them till we reach our second years and are allowed to get our hero licenses. Izuku said, happy to see how everyone here would not make fun of him for not being ready for a fight yet like they probably would in Class 1A. In fact, his classmates were impressed as none of them even considered that very point before he mentioned it, making them glad. Well, except for Kamakiri, but he still understood what Izuku was saying even if he did not like the reality of their situation. A Class 1A, third person POV. Getting back to his class, Aizawa saw Kirishima and Shoji return during his absence along with Honta Siro. Siro, you go to Nezu's office to tell him your side of the confrontation this morning. And be honest, or else, he said, making it clear by saying the words separately to put emphasis on them. This made Siro gulp before going to the office as he was told to do. Letting the class know of Kaminari punishment, they complained as he had expected, calling out how it was unfair. To make it clear to you all, he said something incredibly racist, which is why he was attacked as Lee as he was. UA does not tolerate such matters. I can assure the punishment for racism here can be much worse than what he got. Granted, he had other things to be punished for beside that one point, but I will not go into that right now as it would require a needless explanation. Aizawa said before going into next week's schedule, making them all excited as they all were happy to get to fight more than rescue training dummies. Clearly, unlike Class 1B, they lacked the benefit of Izuku knowledge to assist them in learning overlooked facts of hero work that their teacher had no intention of providing them with at this moment. The morning lessons went by quickly and luckily without any more incidents from Class 1A. Though some of the students who saw them beating up Kaminari and Siro but did not hear what they said were spreading rumors about Class 1B. They were saying stuff about how they were going on a power trip and attacking anyone they did not like. Though this made it hard to eat their lunch without getting stared at intensely by the whole cafeteria, at least no one was approaching them about it. Well, this is just great. As always, everyone considers Class 1A the stars of the hero course and 1B the extras to make them look better. Monoma said dejectedly with a sigh as he took another bite of his food. Yeah, but now we are being called everything short of villains or criminals. Kanoko Komori responded to him, upset about how they were getting the wrong kind of attention. Just ignore them. The truth will either make its way to them, or they will stop talking themselves if we stay patient. That means you, Kamakiri. Jirota Shishida said, reminding their most hot-headed it was better to show restraint right now rather than lash out against them. Hey, I am not the one who people are making these rumors because of what they did. Kamakiri pointed out how no one was spreading rumors after what he did to Tenya Ida. This was mainly due to the fact he checked around that people had turned away before he took care of the trash before him. Sorry again everyone, this is all my fault. Rin said in apology to his classmates, seeing now how his overreaction had dragged them all down with him. There is no need to apology, your outburst was understandable, and besides, if not you then he would have likely done something himself. Shishida said, pointing his thumb to Kamakiri, who began arguing back. With a bit more back and forth between the two, their conversation had ended, and as they had predicted there was no incidents at lunch. Gym number 3. Third person POV. Vlad King had taken Izuku after school to Gym 3, this time with Rin, Kendo, and Kamakiri staying behind to help Izuku train. He was on the fence at first about Rin joining in due to his punishment, but since it was not actual hero training, and he was a skilled close combatant, he decided to allow it. This would also save him and Midnight the trouble of going out of either of their ways to take Izuku home today with all 4 students together. All right Midoriya, you have a strong body but little actual fighting skill. Since you can't use your quirk properly yet, we need to make sure you can properly punch, kick, and do basic throwing, grappling attacks in order to even the odds tomorrow for you. Vlad King declared as he got out a pair of gloves meant for practicing punches with someone. All right Midoriya, don't hold back when you punch into these gloves, okay? I recommend you go left with your right hand and right with your left hand. Kendo told him in order for him to get used to blocking with his other forearm in a fist fight. No, keep your arm straight like this unless you are going for a haymaker, and don't try that yet as we need to learn the basics first. Rin told Izuku to see him bend his arm a bit when he punched, correcting his posture. After a few more punches and adjustments they began working on his kicks. Seeing as his legs were stronger than his arms by a fair bit, he suggested Izuku focus on kicks just a little more in his fighting style. No, you kick them here if they catch your punch and punch them here if they catch your kicks. Kamakiri told Izuku while teaching them some traditionally considered dirty attacks in a fight. Rin and Kendo both could not help but cringe as they, like most, considered these dirty shots to take against an opponent. But as far as Kamakiri, Vlad King, and Midnight were concerned, these were all fair things to do to an opponent in a fight. Oh yeah, Midnight had joined them after Izuku started practicing his kicking, telling everyone favorite blood-quirked hero she had a surprise test for Izuku. Calm down Vlad, he will be fine, I think. Midnight said, not exactly inspiring confidence into him, but decided she could not do any more damage than Aizawa had done. All right you 3, prepare to have me break your butts cause you 3 will be fighting this opponent with Midoriya. She declared proudly as her and Vlad King went to the railings above them, saying they could not step foot on the ground outside of the rectangular ring. Coming through the door was a modified version of the one-pointer robots from the exam, where instead of guns it had thick 5-fingered hands like the zero-pointer did. On top of the original wheel, it moved on. It had 2 legs, very basic but still allowed to walk rather than drive around. Midnight was wearing some sort of metal headgear and a tight bodysuit with what looked like sensors all over it. Grinning like a child opening their Christmas present, they knew they were in for some serious hell courtesy of her. This is experimental tech made by the now third-year students that Nezu hopes to implement in next year entrance exams. With this I can control the robot by linking its senses to mine. That means I will feel any damage it takes without actually getting physically hurt, if you 4 even can hurt me, that is. Midnight said, not missing the glare from Kamakiri, who did not take too kindly to being looked down upon. With that the battle began, with her making the robot leap at Kendo with surprising them all with the modified version of its agility. Bringing her right hand down in an over-the-shoulder motion, the robot delivered a devastating haymaker, crushing the ground beneath it into rubble and dust right where Kendo was standing a moment ago. Luckily for her, Izuku was able to get to her just in time. Kicking the arm after grabbing her, he used it as a hard surface along with the force of the attack to get them out of harm's way. Kendo focus, Rin said, launching his scales at its back to try to force her to attack him. However, his scales barely scratched the armor at all, giving Midnight a tingly sensation that she barely noticed. Due to the helmet now covering up her vision, however, with what the robot camera was seeing, Rin had still managed to accomplish his goal, forcing her to spin the top half around to look at him. "Time for me to take a stab at you, bitch," Kamakiri said, creating two long blades running forward, aiming for the left leg joint. Midnight, being able to tell where they were aiming and what they were planning, easily countered it by spinning around to catch him and spinning him around some more before throwing him away. She saw him coming from behind through the reflection of this recently cleaned robot arm joint, which was how she saw him coming before he spoke. This throw caused Kendo and Izuku, who used the distraction to try and run up behind her, to split to avoid crashing into him. Kendo, once close enough, enlarged her hand to strike with two palm thrusts to knock it off balance, while Izuku came in with a straight punch in the same spot, putting a dent in the middle. This translated into the equivalent of a solid gut punch, almost bringing Midnight to her knees. Just kidding. Midnight believed in the phrase, "A tank can take as much damage as it can deal." So as a tank, or rather sadist, she believed she should be able to take as much pain as she dishes out to villains. Recovering in shocking speed, she used the robot left hand, slamming it down on the ground, rolling to the left to face Rin, who was behind her. Seeing him running to her as she fell back, Midnight saw him coming at her, extending the long robot arm, hitting him mid-run, sending him flying back. "Not bad, Rin, your training before Ua really paid off," Midnight said, seeing how he was still standing on his 2 feet despite the heavy blow he just took. Kamakiri, however, would not be bested so easily by her, aiming for the one spot he knew no one could withstand getting struck in, male or female. "Take me in the ass and die, you bitch," Kamakiri shouted at her, not realizing what it sounded like when said out loud, causing everyone but the two teachers to get flustered. Midnight turned around ready to grab him again, but this time he ducked between the hands, sliding forward and punching it right underneath where it gyrated. This, however, due to the sensory replication of the technology, essentially translated this to his shoving his fist up her, well, let's just say it was not the hole he mentioned. As a result, she screamed in pleasure as the overwhelming shock to that part of her body from the machine caused an instant orgasm, making her fall back. The robot, due to the hole he punched in it, cutting his knuckles in the process as well, mimicking her orgasm, caused something specific and unpredicted to occur. It released a huge wave of lubricant from within the machine that is used to keep its joints from getting rusty or locked up. "Iu, Rin, Kendo, and Izuku said in unison as Kamakiri had to fight the urge to vomit as some it got in his mouth when he got covered by the stuff. The only other adult in the room was now worried if the lubricant the machine used was safe to get on human skin or to be consumed. Assuming Midnight should still even be considered an adult in a situation like this with what she just did via the robot to her student. "Hey Kamakiri, get back, it might gush again." Izuku ran up to him, pulling on his arm, trying to warn him. "Don't you mean squirt?" he replied to his classmate, thinking his word choice was off. "No, that was definitely a lot of liquid, so I think gush would fit better." Izuku responded back to him, making it clear he considered a squirt a small amount of liquid. "But they call a lady a squirter if they release a lot, so shouldn't it be squirt?" Kamakiri said, scratching his head in confusing, as that was what he heard from his older male cousin about women. "That is rude, and besides, we are talking about a robot here, not a human being," Izuku chided, reminding them of what exactly got what all over them. "Yeah, but it was only mimicking Midnight Sensei, so technically it was a human that wetted themselves all over me," he responded back, pointing out the technicality of the situation to them, not wanting to lose even an argument. Everyone else watching and listening to this could not believe they were having an argument like this right now. "Will you two stop it before I come?" Kendo yelled at them, getting cut off as it orgasmed again along with Midnight a second time, covering Izuku now. Everyone looked to her as she was cut off at a awkward pause. "I was going to say come over. Come. Notcum cum," Kendo exclaimed in embarrassment as she went red in the face from having to explain it to these boneheads. "I will consider this argument a tie," Kamakiri said before Kendo slapped him upside the head for missing the more important part of the situation. You two go to the male locker room to get showered and, Izuku, I forgot you don't have a spare gym uniform, do you? As Vlad King asked them as they nodded a definitive no dejectedly. Do either of you have spare uniforms, and possibly underwear to lend Midoriya? He asked his other students, receiving nods of no from them as well. Kamakiri only had one set of underwear in his school uniform while Rin's gym uniform was soaked through in sweat and covered in dirt, so he needed his uniform and had no change of underwear. I have spare pair of panties in my locker if he needs them. Kendo said embarrassingly as Izuku then added that he still had the female school uniform he received by accident in his locker. With that they went to shower, Izuku and Kendo in the girls' locker room after grabbing the uniform from Izuku's locker as she did not want either of them to see her spare underwear. In fact, she had to make Izuku promise to close his eyes as he got dressed when she handed them to him. Naturally she would turn away after he came out of the shower wrapped in a towel. When Kendo and Midoriya got to the locker room she turned away after giving him the bag to put the soiled clothes in to be washed afterwards for tomorrow. Putting the clothes in the bag he carefully turned the corner of the wall separating the showers from the rest of the room to place the bag down. Setting down the shampoo and conditioner Kendo gave him to get the awful smell of machine lubricant out of his hair he turned the water on causing steam to fill the area. Standing just outside the range of the falling water to feel it with his fingertips, he pulled his hand back as it was a little too hot. Turning on the cold water handle he waited a moment to test the water again to see if it was the right temperature. Not too hot but not too cold either, perfect. Izuku said to himself softly as he got under the water to begin rinsing off some of the lubricant. The hundreds, thousands, no millions of tiny water droplets rolled down his body going down the delicate skin of his back, reaching his firm but soft derriere before falling off. His small frame hiding under the baggy gym clothes his naturally delicate-looking figure that had become toned and not muscular but still strong since he began his training for Ua. Arms befitting that of a Greek goddess gathered some shampoo and then he began running his hands through his hair lathering it creating bubbles. The faintest scent of wild berries filling his nose as he began humming a tune he heard from somewhere he could not recall. His legs were the one part without any eye-catching scar, so smooth and pure-looking they would draw your eyes in upon seeing them. Bending them ever so slight so he could lean his head forward like a noble lady about to do a curtsy upon greeting someone. This was to wash out the shampoo he had taken care to scrub deeply into his hair before moving on to the conditioner that had a woodsy smell creating the illusion of picking wild berries in the forest. Sitting on the bench in her failure to look away she could only continue to stare at Izuku or rather his silhouette from the light steam covering his body in the showers. Originally, she had intended to look at the wall facing away from the showers in order to give him proper privacy. However, what she did not realize was that there was a mirror in front of her showing her the silhouette of Izuku from the mirror. Now it would be simple enough to just ignore the mirror and close her eyes to stop staring at him while he showered. But the moment she saw the silhouette she gulped loudly though not loud enough for Izuku to hear over the shower as she was too drawn in to look away. Oh God, why did I have to have shampoo and conditioner with those 2 cents with me at school? Kendo chided herself as she asked herself what she was thinking. Now all she could see was Izuku walking through the woods picking berries. The mental image was so adorable she felt like her head was going to burst into flames from how excited it made her. Izuku had turned off the shower draping a towel around his shoulders covering his whole body as he did not want to take the chance of her seeing most of his scars if any. His green hair that was now heavy due to all of the water in it, had covered the sides of his face going to just below his shoulders just stopping from covering his freckles showing how long his hair really was. If anyone saw this face, they would no doubt think he is a girl, and if Kendo would ever to be asked about this, a hot girl at that. Proof of that was how as soon as she saw his face in the mirror she covered her eyes with one hand while the other held out her spare underwear and socks to him. "Gee, take this," Kendo said in a bit of a panic too focused on Izuku looks to remember why she felt so awkward about helping him with this. Izuku could only nod back in response to this act as he was simply overcome with embarrassment that he, as a guy, had to borrow a girl's underwear and a classmate at that. Getting dressed quickly he just barely managed to put on the socks he got from Kendo nearly completing the school uniform. All he had left to do was to button up the uniform jacket, and after Kendo pointed it out, redo the white dress shirt underneath, as he forgot to tuck it in when doing the skirt. That was when someone came barging in, practically buzzing with energy. It was a girl who anyone who attended UA would be able to recognize, or rather should recognize in Izuku's opinion. It was Najire Hado in all her overly curious, periwinkle-colored wonder, who had decided to hug Izuku from behind, pressing her chest into his back. "You two must be first years, and you're so cute. Especially the green bean here," Najire said as she nuzzled Izuku's cheek affectionately, thinking he was a female student. Then she suddenly stopped. Letting go and turning him around, she began patting his chest, making Izuku and Kendo worry she had found out he was a guy. Why are you not wearing a bra?" she exclaimed, relieving them that she might not have pieced together the truth. They felt relief not because of having to explain the ridiculous circumstances that led to this, but possibly dealing with an angry third year who might beat up Izuku, thinking he was a pervert. "I have a spare sports bra in my locker you can borrow for going home. It will be a bit big on you, but a girl should never go around not wearing a bra. If a pervert grabbed you and found out, it could be some really bad news," Najire said, pulling up Izuku's shirt and jacket, removing them in one swift motion, not realizing she was basically the one being a pervert right now by undressing a random guy. The moment she turned around to open her locker, Kendo grabbed a stunned and paled face, shaking Izuku by the hand, grabbing his clothes along with their school bags using her other hand. Running out of there screaming an apology, she scared Kamakiri and Rin, who were waiting a little bit away from the door for them to come out. Confused, they chased after her in silence, accidentally hitting Najire in the face and knocking her out with the door as she had partially opened it when they ran by, about to give chase to the two first years herself. When they got a good distance away, Izuku fell to the ground, trying to cover himself up as he pressed his back against the wall, looking like he was about to cry. "Hey Midoriya, why are you?" Kamakiri was about to ask when Izuku cut him off as he tried to place a hand on their shoulder. "Don't look at them. Turn around," Izuku shouted at them, confusing all three before they noticed the hand-shaped scar on his shoulder and turned around for him. Finally getting fully dressed, he turned, wiped his tears that were lingering on the edge of his eyes. Sorry everyone, I just don't like people seeing me get dressed for." Izuku struggled to explain his reaction to them, freezing up a bit as Kendo put a hand on one of his hands as he was hugging his elbows together. "It's okay Midoriya. When you're ready we will all be here to listen, and by all I mean everyone in Class 1B. Kendo said, smiling as she decided to not fight the urge to protect him. "You really are like a big sister. I see what Shiozaki meant now," Izuku said, smiling as he let his arms fall to his sides, before hugging her. Kendo had gone completely red in the face as she was not expecting this. The snickering of the other two guys behind her only made her embarrassment worse. With this, Izuku had just finished getting dressed once Kendo turned back around, of course. Hearing two people from down the hallway, one of them asking the other where they thought their friend went, saying she was taking too long to get changed. Rin and Kamakiri, despite not getting an explanation as to why Izuku and Kendo were running out of the locker room with Izuku half naked, picked up quickly the reason involved this friend of these people. Not wasting time by explaining there, Kendo spoke up. "We will explain on the way to the train station. For now we need to get out of the school." Kendo told them that as all four ran for it, just avoiding contact with Mirio Tagata and Tamaki Amajiki. MUSTAFU train station. Third person POV. Like the majority of UA students, three of them did not live in Mustafu, so all except for Izuku commuted by express train to school and naturally back home. After the earlier incident and how it was still earlier than when they thought they were leaving school that day, they figured they had time to see what Izuku home was like. "You guys really don't have to walk home with me, you know," Izuku told them, but after earlier they had shot him down. Even though all they came across was 8 muggings, 3 drug deals being broken up, and 1 convenience store hostage situation, they had still insisted on coming with him. Izuku thought they were being a little too overprotective, but to all of them the sudden spike in crime rate tonight made them worry, as Izuku seemed like a magnet for problems. When he told them this amount of crime was normal, though, they told him how wrong he was and that he apparently needed to reassess his definition of normal. "You two better keep a close eye on your classmates there. Pretty girls like them always end up getting taken hostage by a villain over boys like you two," The old man working the ticket pay counter where you enter said, making Izuku realize he was referring to him as one of the girls. Do I really look that much like a girl? Izuku asked them depressingly as they rode the train to where he lived. Kamakiri was the first to answer despite the awkward atmosphere, as he was never one for waiting for someone else to finally break the silence. Well, to be fair, you have a fairly androgynous look, so when you wear clothes that people think only one gender can wear, he trailed off as there was really nothing else to say on the matter except saying a sympathetic sorry. But he knew Izuku was not weak enough to need him to add that after seeing how well he took to being in danger along the way to the station. As two of those muggings were when he tried to buy them sodas from vending machines twice along the way. Speaking of paying. Oh yeah, there was something I wanted to ask you, Midoriya. It's about your family, so if you don't want to answer you don't have to. But what exactly does your dad do for a living? Based off of the bundle of cash in your wallet you pulled out that you said was your allowance, it looks like your family is well off. Rin said, hoping he was not overstepping his boundaries with his new classmate who was clearly not used to being close to others outside their own family. Izuku just laughed this off as he did not think it was weird to ask a classmate questions like what their parents did for a living. No need to worry, my dad runs his own business in America but lives in New York. He has gotten busy recently in the last 5 years, so he hasn't had a chance to come home much, but we do call him once a week. After taxes and other business expenses, his salary he takes home is around 1 million a year, so we don't really need to worry about living expenses. Hey, why are you all staring at me like that? Izuku asked them as to wonder why they were staring him mouths agape. What Izuku did not realize was that the reason they were in shock was that even if they assumed his father split his salary evenly in half, that was still a lot. To be more specific, once converted from American dollars to Japanese yen, even half of his total yearly salary was nearly 15 times average here in Japan. In their eyes, to say he qualified as a rich kid was an understatement, which made it even more odd as to how he could be so humble with all of them. Midoriya, never tell anyone else what you just told us, trust me, it will only be bad news for you. Kendo told him, recovering from her shock first to make sure Izuku never told this to the wrong person. Okay, but why? Izuku asked her, confused about what was so odd about his father being a successful businessman in America. Just trust me on this, okay Midoriya? Kendo told him, now understanding why they say ignorance is bliss. Midorya apartment. Third person Pav, Kendo, Rin, and Kamakiri were surprised to see Izuku and his mother lived in such an average-looking apartment, half expecting him to be living in a more upscale place with a doorman. Instead, it was a regular apartment with an old elevator. In their opinions, needed a light cleaning if it was to be used every day. Hey Midoriya, why live here of all places? Rin asked him as they exited the elevator. Well, my dad says it is better to live modestly so that way no one bothers you. In fact, he always tells my mom how silly she is when she says she wishes she wasn't so plain looking. Izuku told them, making it clear to them his dad does not like attention. Odd for someone as successful as him, but hey, it is not like he is hurting anyone by living this way, right? They all more or less collectively thought back in response. As soon as they opened the door, Izuku was swept into a hug by a short, plump, and overall homely-looking woman who resembled Izuku a bit, well, in terms of color. Most of his facial features they assumed he got from his dad rather than his mother. Oh, you must be his classmates, come on in. Izuku, why are you wearing the female uniform again? Inko Midoriya greeted her son and his classmates before pausing to look him over, then inquire about the uniform. It is kind of a long story. Can we go in so I can change back into my underwear and return Kendo her pair? Izuku asked her awkwardly, making Inko have even more questions than before. Okay, you two go to your room while I make some tea for everyone before calling taxis for them. Inko told her son in a mixture of confusion and stone-cold shock at this revelation. The others tried to turn down her offer of a taxi, but she insisted that it was the least she could. Also, it was just dangerous in general to let them all walk home as it was now dark out. With that, a few minutes passed when Izuku and Kendo returned, with Izuku wearing track pants and a shirt that had the English word for shirt on it. So, tell me what happened that made Izuku wear the female uniform and why both him and you, Kamakiri, smell like you just took showers. She asked them after they all introduced themselves. Well, you see, Midnight Sensei basically squirted lubricant all over the two of us, so we needed to. Kamakiri began cutting right to it, hoping to make it quick, not realizing how bad it sounded out of context before getting cut off. What? Inko exclaimed, shocking them all as she ran over to the next room to grab an anatomical doll she got recently for when she decided to ask Izuku certain questions. I want you two boys to tell me where she touched you on this doll, she said, scaring them all as they realized what she was thinking. Hold on, Mrs. Midoriya, and listen to the whole story first, Kendo lightly shouted in a panic, waving her hands around. With that, Inko let Kendo explain the whole thing from start to finish, making it clearer to the mother what actually had happened, as well as what occurred on the way here. I see, Kamakiri dear, I can tell you are not the kind of person to mince words and likes to fight. But in the future please be more careful as you explain things to people, she told him, shaking her head lightly. Seeing how exhausted they looked when explained the villain run-ins, she decided to send Izuku away. Oh, Izuku, my phone died earlier, can you grab the house from my room? I left it somewhere on my bed earlier, Inko asked him as he went to grab it for her. But it is right there behind the cookie jar, you were floating it with your quirk, Kendo asked her, confused as to why she sent her son away like that. I know, but if Izuku was here it would take twice as long to try and attempt to explain why he and his father encounter villains at such an odd rate, Inko told them, seemingly shocking the three students. The mother could not help but giggle at this. Oh yes, Izuku's father was just as much of a magnet for danger as he is, despite the fact he dislikes attention. It reached a point where they both do not realize how odd it is for either of them to encounter villains at such a rate like they do. The way his father waves it off as just a normal day was quite funny to hear the first time, but trust me, you will get used to it, she told them as they began talking for a few more minutes without Izuku taking her warnings about going to conveyor belt restaurants to heart as she told them a story. It was about how her husband just continued to eat food from the converter belt despite a hero and villains wrestling on top of it, sending food flying everywhere. Apparently, his father was also in the habit of constantly analyzing the quirks he saw around him and taking notes on heroes. Hey mom, I can't, oh there it is. Izuku had finally come back in, about to tell his mother he could not find the house phone before he saw it behind the cookie jar, bringing the stories to an end. Izuku, much to his dismay, was being walked into the school by his mom, as she was also told yesterday by his classmates how Class 1A was treating him. It was embarrassing to say the least, but to say his mother trusted him to tell her the truth about people mistreating him was as far from accurate as possible. As expected, the other few students coming in so close to class starting were whispering about them as they walked into the building. It did not help that his mother was wearing a pantsuit into this meeting, trading in her sweet-looking motherly appearance, getting in exchange for it an aura like that of an angry mother bear ready to take out her claws and tear apart the UA administration. Hey, is that lady a new teacher? So, is she a hero? She gives off the attitude of someone prepared for a fight. I don't recognize her though, and she looks really similar to that girl walking beside her. So, she brought her mom to school. Stifled chuckle, talk about pathetic. Don't be rude. What if her mom is a teacher? You might end up getting her as a substitute for today. Inko simply shrugged this off as Izuku was trying his hardest to resist covering his strawberry red face as they walked into the building. Fortunately for them, Vlad King was there to meet them at the entrance, waving them over to follow him down the right side hallway. We don't need you to come in for this meeting, Izuku, so you can go straight to the nurse's office to get the male uniform that arrived this morning along with the other spares we finally got made. The company that makes UA uniform only does bulk orders, so that is why it took so long to get a uniform for you, since got the smallest bulk order we could. Vlad King told his student, then continued to a slightly more in-depth situation when his mother raised an eyebrow at him. Just a few minutes ago he was sitting in the teacher lounge hoping he could get through homeroom without incident when Nezu told him the security cameras picked up Inko Midoriya walking in with her son, rushing to greet as he was told while he heard papers being shuffled and organized in a panic in the background. Vlad knew that it would be a rough morning. Well, that is fair enough. You are a fairly large school, so I can see why you got locked into placing bulk orders by your supplier. Inko said, releasing a sigh, not too happy she had to give them a pass on this as their system for ordering uniforms made sense from a budgetary standpoint. Vlad for his part was trying his hardest not to sweat bullets, wondering how such a sweet-looking woman could come off as so threatening to him. The students, seeing his struggle clear on his face, as the Midoriyas did not see as they were looking at his back, would be the only ones to know until the newest batch of rumors the students were spreading made it through the school. A nurse's office. Third person Pav. Splitting up, Izuku went into the nurse's office to see recovery girl sipping some tea as she was reading over a student file. "Oh Midoriya, there you are. I have the regular male uniform for you on the bed there. I also put a new gym uniform beside for later if you need it during training. The other one kind of fell apart in the wash after the lubricant damaged it a bit, along with your boxers sadly," she told him as she ushered him to the bed, closing the curtain to give him some privacy.
Thank you for this," Izuku told her as he got change, not realizing that before he left, he had accidentally put the female uniform in his bag with the gym uniform as he was in a rush to get to class. Luckily for his peace of mind, recovery girl assured him that he would not be considered late. He found out why when he got there. Class 1B. Third person Pav. Walking into class, Izuku was greeted with congratulations about how good the male uniform looked on him. At the moment they had an ectoplasm clone filling in for them, and in their sister class a door over from them. "You know Midoriya, you looked really good in the female uniform, almost better than the girls in the class," Setsuna said, smiling as she laughed at her own joke before getting cut off. "Oh yeah? If a guy looks better in the female uniform than all of you girls, then what does that say about you girls?" Yosetsu Awase bit back, shocking her, and getting glares from the other girls before he was defended by one of the others guys. "Take it easy on him, Tokage was the one who brought it up. Besides, do you girls really want us to take a vote on this?" Tetsu said, defending his fellow male classmate from the female half like he felt a real man should. Well, in this instance anyways. "No offense to Midoriya, but I have faith that as a woman I would not lose to him." Tetsu. Abara Shiozaki said, pridefully setting herself up for a fall like any other religious figure of the past, allowing their pride to blind them. Ectoplasm, deciding to hold it to a vote to try to quickly settle the argument, got some results that genuinely surprised him and made Izuku unable to look any of the guys in the eye. After taking down ballets for yes or no if Izuku looked better in the female uniform than all the other girls, shuffling them up in a small box to keep anyone from saying who voted yes or no, they read them out. Minus Izuku and the girls for obvious reasons, the results were as followed: 10-3 votes, with Izuku getting 10. All the girls except for Pony Tsunodori and Yui Kodai were laying their heads down on their desks in defeat, as they were basically told a boy looked better in the girl uniform than actual girls. Pony was not upset as she agreed with the guys Izuku looked cute in the girl uniform, not realizing the point of this vote. Yui Kodai, being as stoic as she was raised to be, just shrugged it off as it was a fair democratic vote, so she did not see the point in arguing it. Nezu office. Third person Pav. Greetings Mrs. Midoriya, it is both my own and the pleasure of the others in the room to meet you at last. Nezu said, bringing his paws together on his desk, spoke happily to hide his true emotions as always. On either side of him was a lawyer, both men from the law firm that has a contract to represent UA in legal matters. When they originally were told of what Eraserhead did, they were for a word pissed at the man.
Even if they settled the matter out of court, if even snippets of the truth leaked out and by association them, they could be ruined for it. So, when Nezu pointed out what he was told by Izuku Midoriya about his old school and his plan to divert the mother rage towards them, their bosses had gladly agreed to offering to lending their legal powers to the mother in exchange for silence to avoid bad PR.
Thank you, Principal Nezu, Inko said coldly as she sat down with Vlad King going behind Nezu as he towered over the principal's seat. Noticing the two men who were obviously lawyers on either side of him, but she would not allow herself to be intimidated for the sake of her son. Though I would like to discuss what happened yesterday, I will need to save that for last, as this meeting only started due my son in justified treatment on the first day. Inko told them, making sure to get right to the main topic so as not to lose focus. Yes, that first day, I will start the fact that unless you have any objections, I will have Aizawa take a temporarily leave of a month. Naturally without pay, however, if I may ask for one more week before I do so? Nezu treaded carefully when asking her this but was prepared to explain why, as the issue had a direct connection to her son and his deal. He will offer her. If you do not mind, may I ask why? Inko wondered what the delay could have been, but considering it was a hero school, she figured some form of politics was involved. Of course, you would want to know. As you have recently found out, Katsuki Bakugo has crossed a significant morale line before coming to UA. This meant we had no choice but to temporarily suspend him till we meet with his parents at their earliest convenience. Nezu told her, seeing the confusion on her face. As informative as this was and somewhat answered what they planned to do about Katsuki's treatment of Izuku, Inko could not see what this had to do with the teacher suspension. If we were to suspend him from teaching for a month before coming to a conclusion to the whole Katsuki Bakugo incident, the situation with his classmates could get a tad ugly, to say the least. Specifically, for your son, as due to the things Aizawa said, his reputation is a bit damaged per se in the eyes of Class 1A. So, to avoid your son being confronted by them again, as well as not risking Katsuki Bakugo case getting dismissed in court, we would like to settle on a conclusion they cannot complain about due to the legal reasons I just mentioned that are preventing us from giving them a full explanation, he said as she nodded in return, seeming satisfied to him. Inko for her part understood what he was saying and did not mind if waiting a bit for this teacher punishment if it meant less trouble for his son. However, a month of suspension with no pay seemed too light of a punishment, since he could still do hero work to make up for the financial hit. I'm sorry, though I can wait for you to deliver his punishment. I cannot agree with the punishment itself, as it seems far too light, she said, annoyed he was going to get off so easily. I understand that this is how you feel, however, please hear me out about the deal I am about to offer you for the punishment and not taking legal action against UA nor our teaching staff. Nezu said, waiting for her to respond to the proposal of a deal. What exactly is this deal? Inko asked him, as to wonder how it would be enough to make her want to spare this hypocrite of a teacher from his well-deserved punishment. In exchange for what I said, the law firm that has a contract with UA will for no cost to you assist you in suing his previous schools for what they did to your son. Nezu told her before one of the lawyers added to the pot. Keep in mind that the middle school likely had a significant amount of victims, so if we post a commercial for it, we can make it a class action lawsuit. Not only would it guarantee to wipe out the school financially, but whether it succeeds or not, which we are confident we will succeed, a class action lawsuit against the school will destroy the reputation of all the teachers at that school, essentially black-marking them from ever going near a school again, let alone being a teacher. That is also not including the federal crime of falsifying information on the paperwork his homeroom teacher sent to UA, among any others they have committed. He told the mother, seeing her smile for a moment before going into a contemplative stance. The lawyers knew they had her in the bag. It was just a matter of moments till she said yes to their deal. Inko for her part knew that what the teacher and Katsuki did, altering the information on the paperwork, was a legitimate crime. Since all hero schools were government funded to a certain degree, it was only natural that legally they would be considered government's institutions. Very well, I will accept this deal, but I want you to make sure that the teacher who ruined my son's reputation to his first UA class will admit to his students he was wrong in his judgment to set the record straight. Inko told them as they all agreed to it. After all, even if something that is horrible about someone is true, you can still sue someone for publicly saying it. In this case, what he said was not true, making it far worse for Aizawa than even if he was right about Izuku Midoriya. A few more back and forth to hammer out the final details, and Inko left, sending Izuku a text saying she was making katsudon for dinner. As for Midnight and Power Loader, who approved of her using the robot controlling gear earlier in the day yesterday, Inko agreed to letting Nezu punish them as he saw fit to do in this situation. She understood this was an unexpected technology malfunction that she believed him when he said they could not see coming. Unfortunately for the two teachers, or rather just Power Loader, she asked if his punishment was amusing if she could see it. Though she was joking at first, she was genuinely surprised, along with the lawyers and Vlad King, when Nezu said yes to her request. As for Midnight, she got lucky, as Izuku had told his mother after his first day how she comforted him after Aizawa tried to expel him. So Inko asked him to take it easy on Midnight, pointing out how she was there to take responsibility for the other teacher's previous mistreatment of her son. UA Class 1B third-person POV lunch had come and gone peacefully today, fortunately enough, which is how the class found themselves sitting, as their teacher would be coming in a few minutes. Oh yeah, Midoriya, what is your hero costume like? Setsuna asked him as she really wanted to show off her own. Oh, my costume? Well, my mother sewed a prototype for the design that I want to use till the sports festival. I'm going to need to get a better one made for the internships that will come afterwards. Izuku said, feeling slightly bad for his mother, but eventually he would need to replace it with something more practical. Vlad King entered, setting down his books and folders before turning to his class to give them a big show of their costumes. All right everyone, today we will do our first combat exercise. Since Rin cannot participate today due to his punishment, we will have even numbers for a series of 2-on-2 matches. But remember that half of a hero is the costume, so here I present you yours. He said, pressing a button for numbered suitcases to pop out of the wall. Everyone ran to theirs while Izuku went up to him. That's right Midoriya, your costume is still in Class 1A, right? I know it will be a little, or rather really awkward for you to go in there, but I will be there with you, okay? Vlad King encouraged his student, managing to convince the others to go get changed ahead. All except for Kendo, that is, who insisted as the class representative that she should be there as well for Izuku. I can't wait to see your hero costume. Knowing the 1A teacher, I bet he was too lazy to try and get rid of it yet. Kendo said, taking a jab at Aizawa as Vlad King laughed along with her and Izuku chuckled with them. Despite how the man had treated him, he was still a hard-working hero, so they should still show Eraserhead some respect, right? All Might had just come in a moment ago, causing everyone to get excited when Izuku, Vlad King, and Itsuka Kendo came in, making them go silent. Excuse me, but what exactly are people from Class 1B doing here instead of going for combat training like we were about to? Ida asked, thinking he said it politely, which he did, except the almost sneering look on his face showed how he looked down on them along with his condescending tone. This look Ida gave them made All Might frown, as this was not appropriate of a hero, especially one of the Ingenium legacy he has heard Ida bragging to other students about. Granted, Ida did not realize he was bragging, but the way he told his classmates and the support course students who asked to confirm this first, was most definitely bragging. Young Ida, was all the blonde hero said, making his tone clear he was upset at them about what they said, embarrassing the speedster. I take it you came here to get young Midoriya hero costume? I was just about to take out the suitcases, so go ahead and get yours quickly. All Might told them as Izuku smiled at the idea of wearing his hero costume. Kendo for her part was happy to see the symbol of peace properly disciplining a student for rude behavior. Where is it? Izuku asked as he could not find his among them, confusing everyone, including Class 1A. It's not there. All Might looked himself to see his protege was right. Give me one moment to call Power Loader in support to see what happened. For now everyone in 1A go grab your own and go get change. He told them as he went to a far corner to call Power Loader. After a few minutes of back and forth with them, All Might was grimacing, causing the other three to worry. It was a good thing he told the others to leave already. Don't tell me. Vlad King trailed off, already feeling the headache and rage coming to him thanks to Aizawa again. Yes, I am afraid so. Aizawa decided it was pointless to keep a hero costume for someone he was expelling and took it to be disposed of. All Might began to trail off and stopped as he saw Izuku fall down onto his knees looking crushed. But don't worry young man, he said, getting all their attention. Power Loader had basic body armor and reinforced gloves for you to wear over your gym uniform in the meantime. He told me he would make your costume himself this weekend, so do not worry, as a new one will be ready come Monday. He said, seeing the relief wash over their faces. Though Izuku still showed sign of disappointment, but they understood he was actually sad, as they too would be sad if they were in his shoes. With that, Izuku and Kendo went down to support to grab his stuff, while Vlad King went to start the combat exercises with the others. Nezu office, third person Pav, currently wanting to throw his teapot against the wall and scream. Nezu was pacing around the room. Now thanks to Aizawa they may have angered Mrs. Midoriya yet again, and right after they just managed to calm her down from last time. This however changed Power Loader punishment from the accidental midnight orgasm incident to a joint three-way lecture with Midnight. Originally it was going to be a game where the second-year hero class hunted him down around campus for extra credit on their exams, depending on how close they got to capturing him or if they caught him. I swear, if his quirk was not so useful for keeping out of control students in line, I would have already fired the man. Nezu muttered to himself, as he did agree a lot with Aizawa's view of how to teach but not how the man executed said style. He just wished the man learns from this incident with Midoriya about not doing a half-assed job as the teacher acknowledged by the public as the superior hero course teacher due to teaching 1A. UA Training Ground Alpha Third Person POV Observation Area. Being one of the fake city sections consisting of nearly 24 city blocks, it was one of the test sites for the entrance exams as well as one of the more spacious training grounds. Though it had cameras and speakers, unlike the training ground that 1A was using today, which was on a much smaller scale than the larger training grounds like this one they used for the exams, it did not have a viewing room to oversee the whole area that was directly connected to the speakers and cameras, so when using this training ground, they needed to use a tablet. Izuku and Kendo had arrived halfway through the 2-on-2 fights, so there was only one more fight before their turn as their teacher had decided to automatically partner them up. It seemed that their opponents would be Tagaru Kamakiri and Jiroda Shishida as he judged them to be the best suited opponents for them. Kamakiri would be aggressive enough to keep Kendo from focusing on protecting Izuku like Vlad King thought she might, while Shishida would be aggressive enough to push Izuku to his limits but would also be able to hold back Kamakiri if he got too intense. Tetsu really is like a wall of steel, Izuku murmured to Kendo beside him as he saw their metal-covered classmate block a direct hit from Pony Tsunotori charging strike holding his ground. This was also while he blocked Yui Kodai throwing an enlarged cement scrap at his face, something that would normally instantly knock someone else out. That also includes Shishida. Luckily for them, their teacher managed to borrow a portable small flat-screen TV from Powerloader when he went to get the tablet from them for the surveillance cameras that he needed to use to watch the progress of the fights. That is an understatement. I doubt even my martial arts could break through his defenses, Kendo said as she was impressed by his willpower to take those hits and keep moving. This was when she noticed their opponents and realized they needed a strategy to win this. Midoriya, do you have any ideas on how to beat Kamakiri and Shishida? Kendo asked, remembering what his mom said about him always analyzing the quirks around him. I do, but it is not the straightforward fight Kamakiri will have preferred, Izuku said as he went into detail about the plan. Fake apartment building. Izuku and Kendo got to work fast with her setting the stage for one fight up in the penthouse suite of the building while Izuku went to the basement. Grabbing some tools, a bit of string, and an empty bucket that were all left behind by the support course student that assisted Powerloader in fixing this building a few weeks back when they forgot them in a rush. Fortunately for Izuku, it was easy to jury-rig what he had in mind with the supplies they lucked out on finding. Observation area. Vlad King was currently grimacing at the sight of what the two students were doing now, realizing how dangerous Midoriya intelligence really was, as well as the major apology he would be giving to Powerloader later for what Izuku had done to the building. The students around him, on the other hand, watching from the synced portable flat screen, were curious as to what they were doing. Why are they setting a trap both in the basement and on the top floor? Tetsu asked, tilting his head in confusion. I don't know, but I am surprised that Midoriya has it in him to play dirty with traps like that. I think I might ask him out soon at this rate, Tokage said, chuckling to herself before feeling a death glare from all of the others. What did I say? She said, raising her hands in a surrender, hoping she wouldn't have to dodge any attacks. You will not defile such a pure and innocent soul, especially one who is still in healing that we promised to protect, Shiozaki said, leveled and calm but with the threat clear enough in her voice that doing anything inappropriate to Izuku would result in pain. Sighing, Vlad King spoke up while still being focused on the screen. As much as I appreciate you all wanting to protect Midoriya, I must ask that you do not kill each other over him, he said, making the girls blush in embarrassment and the guys cough or look away, some doing both. In any case, the 5 minutes were up and he had to let in the hero team, with the objective of simply capture the villains since they could only use weapons props in that area 1A was using unless he prepared it a day in advance. All right, your 15 minutes starts. Heroes enter the building and start the exercise, Vlad King gruffly said, making the buzzer go off. Fake apartment building. As Kendo and Izuku suspected Kamakiri came rushing in looking for them, Izuku waited till the power was cut in the basement. This was when Kamakiri was about to open the door to the stairwell. This even caused him to stop in confusion, giving Kendo the chance to jump him as she swung the door open, getting him in a chokehold that was meant to silence him. She then dragged him into the stairwell, locking him in place with her legs. Shishida, doing what they expected, took the other stairwell on the building map that indicated it went straight to the basement. thinking he could take out one of them and restore the lights for his teammate as they hopefully approached the other on the top floor. Back with Kamakiri, as soon as he broke out from Kendo hold, he was assailed by Izuku giving him a haymaker from behind. When he spun on his heels instinctively to respond, however, thinking Kendo somehow got behind him, he was surprised to see Izuku face instead. Kendo then struck him from behind with a chop from her enlarged hand, knocking him out, taking full advantage of Izuku distracting him. Tying him up with regular tape they found and not the capture tape, they would wait till the lights came back on to use the capture tape. With Shishida, he had just reached the basement when to his shock he found an odd setup of a bucket tied to a lever with a leaky pipe leaking into the now overflowing bucket. Realizing that he has been tricked, he quickly turns on the lights and hears an announcement go over the PA system saying that Kamakiri had been captured. Damn it, looks like a 2-on-1. Hopefully Midoriya is as gentle as he looks. Shishida said to himself, already having a bad feeling about this turn of events. Elsewhere, his partner was waking up and attempting to swear through his taped mouth as Kendo figured he would begin swearing upon waking up. Observation area. The more tactical fighters in the class could not help but internally groan at how Kamakiri did not raise his guard when the lights went off. While the less tactical fighters just winced at Kendo rough handling of him as she pulled him into the stairwell with ease. The sight of Izuku getting in Kamakiri's face like he did was a surprise, as he seemed far too gentle when you first saw him to think he could be that aggressive. Kendo distraction got quite a few ooh and ah sounds from her classmates with a few claps. Half of them wondered why they did not use the capture tape to eliminate Kamakiri from the exercise till saw Shishida turn the lights on. By taking advantage of the blackout to distract them, they also forced them to split up. That was a good way to get an advantage over the other team. Juzo Hononuki said calmly as always, analyzing the fight before him. It was this ability to thoughtfully read an opponent and learn from them that got the attention of the hero that recommended him. But they didn't eliminate Kamakiri when they had the chance. Wasn't that a mistake? Yosetsu Awase asked, still not understanding why they went through the trouble of binding them in regular tape when all they needed to do was use the capture tape. If they eliminated Kamakiri any sooner from the exercise before Shishida turned the lights back on, he might have given up and rushed to them. Even if it only tires him a little, having him run from the basement to the top floor will also buy them the time they need to potentially win this exercise with a timeout. Shoda responded before Hononuki could. Though the short was never one to speak first, he always responded back quickly to any question you sent his way. There was more murmuring and talking. As a result, no one noticed the floating pair of gloves with boots moving in sync with each other through the door. Hagakure, due to the slightly odd numbers, was one of the only 6 people on a 3 students versus 2 student team fight to secure a super weapon. With partners like Ajiro Kirishima and Rikido Sato, she was confident they could win if they followed her simple plan. Her first step was to send in Kirishima first to bait out the opposing team first, or even first and second members, to thin out the defenses around the fake bomb. Since Kirishima had strong defenses, she knew he could take at least the opening attack before he needed Sato to help him. With opponents like Todoroki and Aoyama, she knew their best chance was for her to sneak past the two with her quirk while they held off the opponent for her. But of course, as soon as she finished explaining the plan to them in detail, the bell rang for them to start, and their response was, "I'm doing this the manly way and fighting them head on. Leave it to US so we don't have to worry about you. Stay behind and let US focus on beating them. Once we take out Aoyama, we will have a better chance at beating Todoroki." Kirishima and Sato told her, ignoring her plan, thinking she was not strong enough to even go near Todoroki in this fight, thinking that fighting was the only answer to dealing with powerful opponents. If anyone were to ask if she was hurt by them ignoring her plan and thinking she was weak, well, she would tell them honestly that it bothered her greatly. As expected, when she followed them, she saw them break down the frozen doorway to the room with the bomb. Waiting for them were both opponents, with Todoroki setting up ice slabs everywhere, which gave her a bad feeling. This proved accurate as Aoyama bounced his naval laser off an ice slab behind Sato, clearly knowing he would dodge it as he smirked at them. The result was it bounced off an ice slab above the doorway, slamming him from above and causing him to fall on Kirishima. Using the same kind of tactic again, she saw how the laser got ever so slightly stronger when bounced off the ice, resulting in a blast that knocked them out of the room. Todoroki sealed up the door again, amazed that his partner plan worked like said it would. After all, he only went along with it cause he came from powerful family as well. When the blonde boy had told him he was an expert in this due to always staring into his reflection, he thought it was a joke to try and get close to him. Aoyama for his part was also not regretting listening to Todoroki's advice to stay here with him and wait for them to come after seeing the double thrashing he would have received if they approached them. Toru once again tried to convince them to take advantage of her stealth and have them split up in the room to buy her time to reach the bomb. Though she was genuinely surprised to see that Aoyama did not wait for them at the start, as he seemed to love the spotlight. However, like before, they ignored her, saying she had no idea what she was talking about since her quirk was not suited for combat, so she had no idea how a fight actually went. As much as she wanted to point out angrily they did not know either what actually combat was like, she did not want to divide their team further by fighting each other. So, she ditched her gloves and boots, deciding to let them do their own thing while she tried to sneak up on her own. This plan went horribly wrong as her teammates decided to break the ice slabs and throw them at the enemy. This also meant that she was in range as well. Constantly having to dodge while sneaking up on Aoyama and Todoroki was not easy, which caused her to take longer than if they just dodged or kept her presence in mind. Todoroki was trying to constantly freeze them, pushing them back as they were dodging just out of the way before moving forward again to continue their ice attack. Aoyama looked away for a second due to a minor stomachache. Noticing an odd flash to his side, his full attention was diverted to this flash. Looking closely, he could just barely see an outline of a person, more specifically a girl's body shape. "I will focus on the opponent trying to sneak up on us. Would you be all right with dealing with them yourself?" Aoyama asked. Todoroki simply nodded yes, hiding his surprise at this information but deciding to trust Aoyama due to before. This teamwork took out Toru quickly and her teammates, as her quirk ended up reflecting and increasing the strength of Aoyama laser tenfold. The only reason Aoyama and Todoroki escaped with the bomb undamaged was because Todoroki put up an ice barrier to protect them. Shishida had to rush up the staircase to get to them in the upper floors before time ran out on him, especially if they were on the top floor like he was beginning to suspect. Passing Kamakiri on the stairs, he had to leave his partner tied up, even when they managed to bite through the duct tape to yell at him to untie them. "Even though I am pretty sure I have them beat when it comes to raw power, it is still a 2-on-1. And most likely they both will rely more on techniques than raw strength to make up their small but lean physiques," Shishida thought to himself as he tried to recall anything specific Kendo mentioned about her martial arts. However, no information was being recalled. Since it has just been a few days since class started, it only made sense since the school year just started. "Oh well, looks like I will find out when I meet them up at the very top of this place," he said to himself as he was one flight of stairs away from the penthouse. Deciding to abandon any stealth, he went with shocking them with an over-the-top outburst upon entering, hoping to eliminate Kendo first, as she seemed to be the stronger one of the two. Transforming to his full size, Shishida smashed the wooden door to pieces after rearing his fist back while he ran. However, despite jumping to add a little extra impact to the blow, it did instantly break open as his head got stuck in some sort of desk on the other side. A half-second later he then got a low-powered shock, so no serious damage but enough to make his right arm that he punched the door with go numb for what he expected to be the next few minutes. Fortunately, it was not completely numb, so he could still move it enough to block, but that was about it. The next strike broke through as he smashed it with a roundhouse kick, stomping in to exaggerate his presence while looking around the room. Spotting the broken lamp on the floor that he suspected Midoriya rigged to shock him earlier when he tried to punch through the door. Noticing Midoriya hiding behind Kendo, he assumed Midoriya was more of a strategist than an actual fighter, so he decided to disregard him for the moment and take down the seemingly bigger threat in Kendo. "You're going down," he said, using his left arm to deal a haymaker that Kendo easily dodged before jabbing his under his ribs. Kendo was shocked that he did not seem to feel it rolling away just in time to avoid getting swatted by him. Using her enlarged hands, she diverted one punch with her left while uppercutting him with her right. However, that too did very little to actually damage him. It still did a lot more damage than her earlier jabs, but his bulkier form shielded him from most of the damage. Not expecting his full-powered form he had told them about earlier to pack this much of a punch, Kendo was unsure of what to do till Izuku punched them from behind, sending Shishida stumbling forward. As much as the fur-covered teen wanted to think it was just a lucky punch, he felt considerable muscle behind that hit. Turning around going over them both, he now realized when he looked closely at the small part of Midoriya's arm that was exposed that the muscle on it he saw was impressive. Unsure of whether or not Izuku could match his strength, he decided to focus on Kendo still, as he still wanted to at least tie the match. When I grab his punch, run around him. I will try to hold him down while you try to knock him out with your chopping technique. Izuku whispered to Kendo to the point where even she barely heard it, even though she was right beside him. Okay, whenever you're ready, she whispered back, getting a nod in response to what she said. Observation area. Everyone except for Vlad King, Rin, and Kamakiri were surprised to see Izuku was so strong despite his small size as well as his gentle-looking face. The three who were not surprised have already seen him fight up close and knew in terms of physical strength he was up there with low-tier strength enhancement quirk users already. Sir, what exactly was his score on the physical fitness tests when his other classmates were using their quirks? Sen Kaibara asked, confused by what he was seeing for someone the Class 1A somehow tried to justify expelling. He got 8th place, though the students who came in 9th and 10th came close to his scores. He told his students, recalling the video of it Nezu showed him to show how strong the young man was compared to the other students. This revelation clearly shocked his students, not that he could blame them, as he was surprised himself when he found out how high they placed. Damn All Might, I think you may have given him a little too much muscle before getting into UA. Vlad King could not help but think to himself that this much was a bit extreme for someone as young as them. After all, it was not like they were expected to carry the weight of the entire world or something else ridiculous like the fate of humanity, right? The entire class, including himself, winced at the counterattack when they saw the body-shaped indent it left in the floor. Fake apartment building. Izuku moved in without hesitation, dashing at Shishida, ducking beneath and aiming for his solar plexus. This was to make sure Kendo had the time to go around. However, he then saw a right punch coming his way. Unable to dodge or block, Izuku did the only thing he knew he could do. Grabbing the arm, Izuku spun around, kicking Shishida right foot from behind with his own to try and get it off the ground. He managed it, throwing the beastly teen over his shoulder into the ground hard, leaving an actual indent in the ground shaped like them. Though it was only a centimeter or two deep, it was still impressive considering the height difference between the two at the moment. However, it was not enough, as Shishida after a mere 2 seconds had already recovered, rolling onto his stomach before pushing himself back up. Due to the flip, Izuku and Kendo were still in front of him. This changed position of hers, where she was now behind where he was a moment ago, made him realize their plan. Distracting me so she could knock me out from behind? Good plan, but unfortunately for you I have full use of my arm back now, he said, stretching his arm lightly before rushing in for his own attack on the pair. They both had jumped to different sides to avoid his two balled-up fists as they smashed a hole through the floor. Luckily for them, he knew they could easily dodge that. Hence the reason he used enough floor to break through the floor to the floor below them, despite it being enough to cause significant injury. Though Vlad King still warned Shishida over the PA to hold back to be on the safe side, even though he was sure they predicted that outcome as well. Turning to face Midoriya, as he felt confident his collar and his muscles would be enough to block any chopping attack she could do while he took out Midoriya with one hit. Moving in with a right hook, he expected Midoriya to be thrown into the wall due to the impact of his punch. But to his surprise, the green-haired classmate had caught his arm, holding it down with both hands so he could not pull away. Kendo enlarged her hands and grabbed his other arm to prevent him from using it to pry himself free from her partner. You can't hold me back for, Shishida began to say before the alarm went off again. Shishida had been eliminated. The winners are Midoriya and Kendo, Vlad King said, causing the beastly teen to turn to Midoriya. Seeing now he did not feel the tape Izuku wrapped around his arm they were holding, realized if he did not take his eyes off of them he would have seen them doing it right away. Mentally he acknowledged that he deserved the loss for underestimating Midoriya like he did just because they appeared to be too gentle. Observation area. Izuku and Kendo received a lot of praise when they got back to the others over their performance against the acknowledged two best fighters in class at this point. Shishida was acknowledged as one of their top 3 fighters due to his raw strength, while Kamakiri gave off the feeling of having been in more fights than any of them. Though they still needed to see him fight in actual one-on-one combat to see his depth of fighting ability to confirm this, since he got taken down by a sneak attack by 2 people. All right, so would you say was the MVP of that fight? Vlad King asked his students, already knowing the obvious answer. As he expected, everyone said Midoriya was the most valuable person for the fight and began listing off his incredible feats during the match. All were surprised to find out he could carry almost 600 pounds for a good few minutes before inevitable fatigue caught up to him. Keep in mind they also praised Shishida and Kamakiri for their efforts. But the second one was too disgruntled to be approached right now, as he was embarrassed about his defeat. It was during all this landslide of questions and compliments that Izuku was the first to notice the floating pair of gloves and a pair of boots. "Hagakure?" Izuku asked aloud as everyone turned to where he was staring to finally notice her. "Hey Midoriya, your fight was really impressive, a lot more than mine was, that's for sure," she said dejectedly, now making the 1B teacher realize why Nezu sent him the footage during Midoriya and Kendo fight. The footage being of her fight, as well as the security camera footage in the monitoring room after the fight had occurred for some reason. "Oh, come on now, it could not have been that bad," he said, seeing the gloves slump a bit. "Would you like our opinion on the matter?" Vlad King asked the students, who responded with a half-hearted reply about how the criticism cannot get any worse. This made red flags go off in both the teacher and the students' heads, but decided to wait till after they saw it, as none of them had anything important to do after school today. That and the fact that the 1A student had wandered their way after the first training exercise was something odd. Vlad King was, to put in the simplest way possible to describe, upset with Aizawa students. Ignoring your teammate's suggestion, disregarding a fellow hero as helpless or in their way just because their quirk was not specifically suited for combat, ignoring the constant danger of the bomb in scenario. The last one was based off the reckless attacks they launched at the villain team standing beside the bomb, and in his eyes was one of the worst mistakes they made in the exercise. His students were not much better as they began yelling about how her teammates treated her. Turning to Hagakure, he told what he felt like she needed to hear, not to mention also use this to explain collateral damage to his class. "You did a good job considering the power difference you faced, and your attempt at teamwork shows you understand an important part of hero work," he said as he heard her sniffle, assuming it was from barely avoiding crying due to getting acknowledged here. Deciding to prevent more friction between his class and 1A, he would review the video of the observation room later. This was a smart move, as after telling them how she got into a fight with the remainder of the class after they berated her for, in their opinions, getting in the way of her two teammates. Fortunately, when she told him All Might and a few of them backed up her decision supporting her, he was relieved the new teacher was not making any serious mistakes like Aizawa had. Unfortunately, this also got his class riled up even without watching the video of the observations room themselves, so at this point, since they were likely to find out anyway, he figured a more objective view of it would be better. Getting her permission, he played it on the TV for the class to see, reminding them to not cause trouble by picking a fight with them afterwards. Todoroki Household, Endeavor Training Dojo, Third Person POV. "Damn it!" he exclaimed, punching the punching bag for the several dozenth time in a row with his fiery fist since he began. Luckily, all of the equipment as well as the walls themselves were treated to be fireproof in case he ever lost his temper like he was doing today. For the Flame Hero, it was bad enough when his son entered his rebellious phase before entering UA, but then his information network sent him a photo they scrounged up from the internet. Normally he would toss it aside as a fan edit, but there were several, and his people have confirmed none showed any signs of being doctored in any way. The photos themselves showed All Might training and showing an almost paternal familiarity to a kid with dark green hair. However, he did not recognize the face. This and finding absolutely nothing on them, not even a name, meant one of two things. First is that this kid was just some random brat that All Might took under his care. But that seemed highly unlikely to him, as he was sure the number one hero would never waste his time with a complete stranger instead of fighting crime. His dedication to fighting evil was why he respected the man enough to consider him a rival. His second idea was that All Might had a secret family and the coward was hiding them instead of ensuring the peace by showing they had a child to take his mantle like he did with Shoto. The reason he would normally consider was that their quirk was weak, but then logically they should not bother training them if that was the case. In other words, while he created Shoto to surpass All Might, his rival had a child of their own to surpass them, creating a new obstacle for him to overcome. It was after his son's first day at UA that he struck gold, as a child he described that was expelled matched the description of the photo he had. From what his son told him about the first day was that they were a girl, And that fool Racerhead kicked her out of class due to jealousy of superior quirks like his and All Might.
Normally he would not care if that roadblock got removed by someone else, if they were a boy that is.
But a girl meant that he had lost out on so many possibilities to beat All Might. If she and Shoto had a child in the future, then the combination of All Might's strength and his own would guarantee the ultimate hero would be born. On top of that, if that did occur, then he would force her to cut all connections to All Might, as they say, rub salt in the wound, for all the trouble All Might made him go through. I will have to ask Shoto if she was really expelled or just demoted. Knowing that rat, they probably just moved them over to general studies to continue collection tuition money from them. After all, if All Might is trying to hide his family, I doubt even he would be dumb enough to exert pressure on them for a random student. Endeavor said, sighing in mild frustration as the physical training calmed him down enough to think straight, well, his version of thinking straight. Chugging a water bottle till it was empty, he crushed it in his hand, throwing it aside to a corner of the room for now. If she is anything like her father, I cannot force her and Shoto to get together. Instead, I will have to offer her work at my agency as a secretary, as a part-timer on the weekends for now, and a full-time position after she graduates. That way I can give the fool the illusion of slowly falling in love with Shoto before I propose a marriage between them. He thought aloud, his simple plan delivering one last punch, knocking the punching bag loose off its chain before walking out of the room, collecting his water bottle he tossed aside before. Sneering all the way to his office. The thought of finally being able to beat All Might was too much for him to contain his joy. Not noticing the terrified face of his daughter on the other end of the hallway, hiding behind the wall where could not see her when he walked out. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.